Lima.
She was holding me back there.
I thought she was in the mirror.
I was willing to come back. I was trying to stop her, but I couldn't stop her.
I thought you were talking to yourself in the mirror. I didn't see Jose, sorry.
Alrighty. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We can do the roll call.
Here.
Yeah, I think so.
Here. Mrs. Heights.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Lima.
Here. All right, do I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda? So make sure you guys look at also the work session items.
Yes, motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right,
Mr. Chavez.
Yes.
Mrs. Evanson.
Yes.
Mrs. Heights.
yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Lima.
Yes.
All righty, we have an executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and/or instructing negotiators under CRS Section 24-6-4024E regarding negotiations with Mesa Valley Education Association. Present at this meeting will be myself, Director Will Jones, Director Angela Lima, Director Jose Luis Chavez, Director Barb Evanson, Superintendent Dr. Brian Hill, Attorney Tammy Arrett, and Chief Human Resource Officer Nikki Jost. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Seeing no objections, take the vote.
Mr. Chavez.
Yes.
Mrs. Evanson.
Yes.
Mrs. Heights.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Lima.
Yes.
All right, we will move over into our side room. All right, well, good evening, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started here. So we will go ahead and call the meeting to order, and if you don't mind standing with us, we'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Director Evanson, would you like to kick us off? All righty, thank you. All right, February is Black History Month, and so we, as the board, have a proclamation, and Director Jones is going to read that proclamation for us.
Whereas during Black History Month, which is recognized in 1915, half a century after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States, we commemorate the contributions of Black Americans to our nation. Black history is an integral part of American history. And this month is the time to honor, celebrate, and reflect upon the significant impact Black individuals have had in shaping the diversity and inclusivity of our nation. And whereas we recognize the essence of our nation centers around the belief that all individuals are created equal and deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And whereas the contributions of Black Americans from all walks of life and all fields reflect the greatness of the United States. Black Americans have and continue to participate in every American effort to secure, protect, and maintain the essence of American democracy. And whereas not only during February, but throughout the remainder of this year, we as a district must continue to build awareness and an understanding of Black American history and emphasize the importance of valuing differences within our school district. Now, whereas be it resolved that Mesa County Valley School District Board of Education does hereby recognize February 2024 as Black History Month in reflection of our shared history, and as we remember where we have been, may also recognize that our only way to forward is together. We encourage our community to actively engage in the various schools and community activities that will take place throughout the month and celebrate the profound contributions Black history has made for our society.
Thank you, Director Jones. This week is the National Counseling Week recognition. So we wanted to, every February, school districts across the nations celebrate the National School Counseling Week. Taking place from February 5th through the 9th this year, the week is dedicated to recognizing the vital contributions of school counselors within the U.S. educational system. It aims to shine a spotlight on their dedication to a challenging but incredibly rewarding profession. National School Counseling Week highlights our counselors' significant role in guiding students toward academic success and future career planning. The 2024 theme, School Counseling, Standards-Based, Student-Focused, encapsulates their mission. Utilizing research, resources, and robust counseling programs, these professionals support students in becoming productive members of society. They actively guide students in exploring their talents and interests, steering them towards realizing their full potential in both school and life. School counselors focus on fostering positive development in students' social, personal, educational, and career paths, collaborating with parents and educators to create an educational environment where all students feel prepared and supported to be and do their very best. Tonight, we want to take this opportunity to recognize and thank our D51 school counselors for all they do to support our students, families, staff, and schools. We are grateful for your unwavering commitment and positive, and positive impact you have in shaping the future of our students. Do we have any school counselors here tonight? Could you raise your hand? No? All right, well, we'll go ahead and applaud for those who are in our back. So. All right, thank you. All right, next up, we are ready for our long-range facility master plan update. So if Clint, you want to come up and get us prepared for that?
Check, check. All right, good evening, board. Thank you for having us tonight. For those in in the audience and those that might be watching online later. My name is Clint Garcia. I'm the Chief Operations Officer here in District 51, and I am joined by Matt Eller and Matt Porta with Hort Copeland and Mocht HCM, and we will be sharing tonight an update on the facilities, long-range facilities master plan. As you remember, we started back in June of last year, late June, kicking off the facilities master plan, and we are 8 months into this. We are in the final phase of this master plan, and we just want to get you up to date of where we're at so far. And so with that, I will turn it over to either Matt or Lynn.
Lynn will start.
All right.
Do I advance here and myself? I can? Okay. Okay, good. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us tonight. It's been a while since we presented and gave the board an update. I recognize there's a couple new people on board, and so I'll try to be brief, but I'll also try to be thorough and bring everybody up to speed as best I can. Just real quick agenda, wanted to talk about our process overall and where we are in the timeline. Then we have some an overview of assessment scores that has been a bulk of the work that we've been doing so far in terms of assessing the buildings that you have. We're going to give an overview of our planning committee, which has been assembling and meeting on a monthly basis to help give us guidance and input on the plan. And then a quick summary of some of the focus groups and interviews we've been doing with various people across the district and some feedback from them. So I'll just kind of dive right in, and we'll answer questions if you have any, or we can wait to the end too. In terms of our process, kind of presented as a simple four-phase process, started by touring schools, doing site walks and facility assessments in step one, and that began last summer. And then step two, we spent time recording those assessments, analyzing utilization, capacity studies, compiling all the information that we were learning about your district, trying to get a handle on the conditions of the schools and things. And then we're getting into step three, which is looking at a couple or a few different options or approaches to how to tackle the conditions of the schools, how to tackle what we're hearing from people in the schools about the needs and how to support the learning environments. And then working with the committee to kind of say, how would you spend money to tackle some of these needs? And then step four, which we have another couple of months to go, looking at kind of a final long-range plan broken into phases that says we're going to do this now, we're going to do this next, and then we're going to do this in the future. And so we're kind of in step three, step four range, and so that's kind of our process in a nutshell. So like I said, assessment scores have been really the bulk of what we've been doing so far, and the way we have done it or approached it is each school or each facility even will get 3 different scores. The first being actual physical conditions of the building, the second being our take on the educational adequacy, and what that means is are the classrooms big enough? Do they have a good special ed suite? Kind of the things that are not physical condition but support the functioning of the school. And then finally, we looked at utilization, which is the ratio of how many students the school can accommodate versus how many are actually enrolled there. And so, when we're talking about condition, this is a list of things that we typically look at: code compliance, exterior, interior finishes, roofing, mechanical and plumbing systems, technology, all the kind of things that go into constructing a school building, and how, what those conditions are. We'll also look at ADA accessibility, safety, security, fire and life safety, and overall things like that. And then we'll also assign things we see as in a range of, say, we need to take care of this right away, all the way down to, it's still got a 50-year lifespan, or it's just a cosmetic enhancement. So there's a range of priorities for those needs. So we've recently been able to compile scores for each of the facilities that we looked at, and it included, I think, about 40 to 43 of your facilities, from elementaries, middles, high schools, to some miscellaneous and administrative facilities. And so when we had all that data back, we've kind of presented these as coded, so that you won't see the school's name in them alongside them for now, as we just try to keep it a little bit objective for the time being. But you'll see that we've divided them up into tiers of A through F, like a report card, basically. And so, the top tier A, you'll find that, a lot of your newer schools are in this level. It's really heavily based on condition. So, your newer schools are 100%. And then in tier A, you're going to see schools that are above 70% in condition and adequacy for both those. And you have about 20 of your buildings in that, in A or B. And so as we move down, you can see the colors start to change a little bit, but getting into B, the conditions get a little lower, and maybe the adequacy drops under 70%. These are all on 1 to 100% scores. And then, as we get lower in the B tier, some of the adequacy starts to drop. It may have been designed, 40, 50 years ago, and it doesn't have the same size classrooms we would put in today. And so it starts to take a little dip there. And then as we get into C tier, the condition drops below 70% score, and along with adequacy typically. And so we're in the 60s here. And these are your middling schools that are probably in need of a little bit of attention, and have deferred maintenance. And then as we get into D, the conditions really drop below 50% score in either the adequacy, but mostly in the conditions.
Lynn, can you explain just on the conditions themselves, once we start to drop below 50%, what that really means for cost? And
Sure. So the way the condition is kind of formulated is the amount of money that it takes to repair a facility, bring it up to speed, bring it up to code, repair it all, is a ratio of what it would cost to just replace the school as it exists today, but brand new. Kind of like when you do your home insurance and they have a replacement value. So the proportion of 50% says that it would cost half to repair the school of the cost of totally replacing it with like for like. So as we get higher, like 70% means it actually would take only 30% to bring it up to match a replacement school. So it's a little bit inverted.
and true the other way, correct? So if we go the other way, it's going to cost us a whole lot more to get that building back up to.
Right. So as we get down into F tier, you'll see some scores that are 30% or even below, and that means it would cost almost as much to repair as it would to replace. And there are about 7 facilities that we've got in the F tier, which are pretty low on the conditions or adequacy or both. So like I said, we have like about 20 buildings in the A and B tier and 18 buildings in the C and D tier, and then 7 buildings in the F tier. And I think once we're in the D, F tier, there's kind of that's when we start to debate, how much is it worth continuing to invest in this building versus planning for a replacement sometime soon. So that's kind of where we are with the assessments. Are there any questions? I'll pause. Okay. I'm gonna let Matt talk a little bit about the planning committee and what we've been working on.
So we've had monthly meetings with the planning committee, and we've structured those to take advantage of getting chances to see all of some different schools. So we've had each meeting has been at a different location. So our first two are at elementary schools, and our second two are at middle, and our meeting next week is out at Fruita Monument High School. And so then our sixth meeting will be at another high school as well. And we've had the opportunity to take a tour of those spaces. Again, we've had I think the next slide kind of goes through which one, but we started with Monument Ridge as one of the newest elementaries, and able to kind of look at some of the designs and features of that school, and then the second meeting was at Pear Park, and had the opportunity to. The principal from Pear Park's honor committee was able to lead that tour, and again, a newer school, but also designed in a different era, and again, just to kind of see some compare contrast, and a lot of that. Well, it really kind of comes into maybe some of the educational adequacy in terms of the different types of spaces that are needed and wanted and used in schools today than things that we were thinking about 20, 30 years ago. Likewise, our third meeting was at Orchard Mesa, so our newer middle school, and then we had our last meeting was at West. And so again, a lot of differences between West and Orchard Mesa in terms of the type of space and the quality of the space.
Maybe just a little bit.
A little bit. So, we've established some guiding principles that kind of came out of our first couple meetings with the committee in terms of what would be some of the goals for this process and things we need to be remembering, and even kind of the headspace we should all be in as we're discussing the future for the district. And so, we've been going with 51 and 50 as our overall moniker, and so. It's a great name, and so, and again, I'll just hit the big the bullet points. But ultimately, we're looking for clarity. A lot of the goals really need to be focusing on the safety of our schools and our students. We need to be thinking about flexibility on that over time. Whatever we do today needs to set the district up to be flexible. Recognition of being durable and efficient, which really ties into physical conditions that there's a recognition until significant changes happen at a state level. Operation budgets will always be tight for school districts. And so being able to make some long-term decisions today to help districts manage their money operationally in the future is important. Accessibility really tied into promoting and recognition of the community involvement and getting people into schools and getting kids, to schools, and then talked about renewable. And so in that sense, it was really in the context of we're putting together a plan that is realistic, fiscally responsible, recognizes the community it's in, on voter sentiment. So if we have a great plan that no one will vote for, it's not a great plan. So we need to reckon that's a part of the reality. We need to come up with an approach that can allow the district to be successful in the future when the time comes to ask the voters for some bond funding to do some work, that it is realistic. So some of the kind of summaries of we've had a series of meetings, but a lot of conversation early on the importance of safety and security, and we've had both at a committee level and even at a focus group level with folks in the district, and have really highlighted kind of a series of things they'd like to see in each of the schools. A lot of your new schools all have these things, so it's really kind of maybe bringing some safety equity up, and that should be a priority that we should be looking at in terms of this plan. Deferred maintenance, just recognizing that if we're going to have kids in these buildings and we're going to use these buildings, we need to make sure that they're functioning and functional and operationally as efficient as we can make them. And that learning environments, ultimately everything we're doing is about creating spaces for our kids and our educators to succeed, and need to look at opportunities to improve learning environments. And there's a variety of topics. Furniture has come up quite a bit, and again, a lot of the newer schools have some newer furniture that makes it, even like in this room, very easy to reconfigure, and that creates a lot of flexibility for teachers, but just creating spaces that are comfortable for kids. So addressing, and if we got schools that are it's more often too hot than too cold, trying to get those spaces corrected, and equity related to technology, and even recognizing that having a variety of spaces in a school provides more opportunities for different ways of learning and different ways specialists come in and support students. And so one of our earlier exercises on we broke up into groups, and again, it was just really to kind of see where people were thinking in terms of how would you spend money. So we looked at on kind of if you had 3 phases, and we put it on an election cycle, but the years could be fairly arbitrary, and how there's the different categories to spend money: safety and security, learning environments, or new construction. And then there's the different educational types, and just ask each group, if you're looking forward, where you think the district should be investing money, and so at what school and at what kind of scope. And so that each of the groups, it was a great discussion. Each of the groups came up with and had to present their plans and their thoughts, back onto the whole. But there's some level of consistency with kind of the big picture pieces, that there was some recognition that safety and security should be phase 1, priority for the district. Need to address some of the maintenance issues, but also kind of recognize that if you just had a maintenance only bond, that's a tough sell. And so it needs to be paired with some of the other amenities that are important for the students. Learning environments, kind of fell maybe to phase 2, or if there's easy ways to pair up some of that in phase 1. And some of the thoughts there could be related to furniture packages, that, some of these older schools with new furniture could have some new life. And that with kind of the rounds of recent new construction, that really, on the whole, new construction probably needs to be a little further out on within the plan, and that in terms of where to invest some money. So. In January, we had some of the data we just put up on the assessments, and kind of tasked the group with looking at schools or tiers of schools. Now that we have some of this assessment data, would you change a little bit of how you would approach or where you would spend the money, and some questions: at what point would you not invest any more money on, and what would your strategies be? So this is primarily focused on a conversation related to the facility assessment scope, in terms of what schools would you invest some money to fix up. On the whole, there is a lot of conversations that there's already been realignment at the middle school level, and so I'll say some stability in terms of the number of middle schools in the district, and we should invest in those middle schools because they're here, and we're going to have kids in these buildings for a while. So that should be something we should look at investing. Some recognition of with the new Grand Junction High School. Central is now an older high school, and it has some needs, and so do we need to look at some investment there? On the whole, if you don't take care of your B, C, and D schools, they'll become C, D, and F schools, and so what we can do there. Again, anything related to life safety was a high priority. There's some talk about looking at. There's quite a few schools that had high utilization rates with low facility scores. So if we're going to keep kids in these buildings, those would be buildings we should invest in. And we have a lot of kids in those schools. And then in general, areas that would have some reluctance to spend some money on, really need to take a look at the schools in that F category in terms of where they are. I mean, ultimately, on our when and how. There's a lot of factors, but those are targets. And then some comments related to, there's some schools that have maybe a high utilization score, but a low student capacity. And so, and there's been other discussions with other committees about there is a sweet spot at elementary schools in terms of number of kids in the school operationally. So a full school at a small, is that long-term our model, or do we need to be looking at a different model in terms of number of kids in a building? And so. And that, brought us up to last month, and we're back in town next Thursday for our next meeting, and we'll be presenting a little more related to some thoughts on how to package, as we've talked about all these priorities, some of our thoughts on how to organize, what could fit in maybe your next bond, what should be that in the first package, and start to get some feedback on that. We've also been compiling our data, and so we have maybe I'll just call it a dashboard we want to present to just get some feedback on how, is it understandable? If this was out in the public, would people know what they're looking at? So we're going to get some feedback on that before we push it out. So that'll be next week.
Thanks, Matt. So just also, I'm just going to give a quick summary of some of the other discussions we've had, just to bring everybody up to speed, and just to let everybody know we did take the time to interview each of the principals, maybe 90% of them. We were able to get meetings scheduled with, and asked them these 4 questions about what would you change or keep or add to your school, and that kind of helped us fill out that educational adequacy kind of thing, and even helped us pick up on some things we might have missed while we were walking the site. So those were very helpful. Focus groups that have taken place: safety, security, Dr. Hill's teacher advisory group. I've also met with ECE leadership, academic leadership, SPED leadership in the district, and a couple are remaining that we need to get scheduled for this month for input. Up here, you'll see the safety, security focus groups, priorities. Absolutely, we want to establish these across all schools. Access control, communications, cameras, and definitely securing the site from a fencing and traffic bollards standpoint are some of the things that came up repeatedly. And if we look at academics and ECE, education moving more towards flexible groupings of students versus rows of desks with a teacher up front. And so how do we accommodate that in some of our older schools where, that might be a solution of furniture versus in a newer school, it would be a wide spot in the hallway to take kids out to. So a lot of good discussion there. Let's see. Preschool talked about a little bit in terms of the future of preschool in the district, recognizing that universal pre-K is here, it's going to grow, and so how do we accommodate that in the future of the district? Do we want classrooms or preschool classes at every elementary from that standpoint, and what do we need to do to plan for that, versus like ECE centers in every community where it's more of a central hub? And a lot of the comments were leaning more towards, we feel like it's better for the families to have preschool at every elementary long-term, thinking 20, 25 years. So. And then special ed, heard a lot of needs about enrollment in the district is down, but special ed needs and special ed enrollment is up. And so a lot of the older spaces don't quite accommodate the equipment that's needed. And so how can we work on to improve that? And then, just the long-term strategy of providing those breakout spaces and intervention spaces and things that are needed in a modern school as we move forward as a district. So good discussions, all of those. And that's basically, hopefully has brought you up to speed on where we are as a team and the process. So any questions?
Does anybody have any questions? I'm curious about one on safety and security. It says added/upgraded cameras and explore AI software. What AI software is there out there for safety and security? Sorry, I know, I'm curious.
So it's largely centered around, you can add to, Matt, but largely centered around the cameras and what they'll pick up on video and the ability for the computer to detect like a threat, perhaps, without a human having to see.
They never get tired watching the camera.
So, again, I think it's, for us personally, isn't software we're aware of, but certainly your security teams are aware of or know that it's coming or could be available. And so looking at how the fact that maybe, there were conversations, on some ends, like we had an SRO in every building, that'd be a different scenario. So that AI was related to if, the police put a bolo out, keep an eye out for somebody, the camera could say, hey, this person just approached the school, you should go into lock. So that's kind of the technology that it probably exists today, and I don't know what the specific softwares are, and it's ever changing.
Great. I was just curious. I hadn't heard what it could be.
So I don't know the specifics there, but it is kind of tied into that camera, into the camera software.
Yeah.
I have some stuff I can tell you about later.
Sure, Barb will come. Probably freak me out.
It's good stuff.
Any other questions? I know everybody's probably wanting to know which schools are which, and I know the board kind of requested to keep this information a little bit just just so, I don't know how to best explain it. We just wanted to be kind of just looking.
We just wanted to look at it, yeah, very, very subjectively, so that we're not,
Struggling.
there's no emotion involved in this. It's just straight ahead what the committee came up with as the criteria that they were looking at, and this blends into that. So just keeping that, the names of the schools hidden for now, for lack of a better term. It's there, they know what it is. But when we start to assess them, and we meaning the district, look at those and start to assess them, they're really coming at it from clear eyes and not conflating it with any emotion and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we were we were clear with the committee that this committee is not the closure committee, and so we wanted to also create a level of separation between the work of this committee and then the work of other committees, and so it enables them to just look at straight data and scores and say, how would we want to prioritize taking care of these buildings? But like you said, at some point, I mean, we will have to release names as we talk about plans for future bonds and things of that nature. And we are going to utilize some of this data for those other purposes, but we wanted to make sure this committee wasn't feeling like they were the closure committee.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No, thank you, gentlemen, for
All
all
right,
your
thank
work.
you, gentlemen. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great presentation, thank you. All right, next up, we have our strategic plan update for our community and communications. So Tracy and his team can come on up.
Good evening, Board. How you doing?
Good.
Good.
For those in the community who don't know me, my name's Tracy Gallegos, and I'm the Director of Access, Opportunity, and Family Partnerships. And tonight, Callie, our PIO, and I are going to do our strategic implementation update for you all. Before we get going, I wanted to just highlight that the value of the grad profile. Over the course of this school year, we've made intentional efforts to collaborate with our colleagues and community partners to ensure that our initiatives align with the D51 graduate profile. As you may recall, the development of our profile and the overall strategic plan involved extensive consultation and collaboration with various stakeholders in our community. Together with students, staff, parents, and valued community partners, we embarked on a journey to create a guiding document that serves as a roadmap for our district's educational programming. This collaborative effort was instrumental in shaping our approach to the work we're going to be highlighting tonight, and that ultimately will lead to ensuring that all of our students are engaged, equipped, and empowered to be creative problem solvers that are culturally connected and ready to thrive once they leave our district. Tonight's update, we're going to be centered around the work that we've been doing in our engaged and community partners focus area of the strategic plan. Specifically, we're going to highlight the progress we've made toward improving how we communicate and build stronger relationships with all of our D51 families. We also aim to demonstrate that we have a clear vision for how we will continue to grow our capacity to partner with our families to ensure that all our students are able to thrive in our ever-changing world. Before we begin with the update, I'd like to take a moment to recognize and show gratitude for the incredible support that we've received from the amazing members of our action team and our community task force members. Since August, we've met monthly with our action team and assigned important tasks to complete to ensure we're laser focused on accomplishing our goals for implementing the plan this year. Thank you so much to Callie, Sierra, Straya, Lisa, and Claudia for all the extra hours that you put into the work this year. We've also met on a quarterly basis with our community task force to share progress and gain valuable feedback and insight from this diverse group of individuals that includes principals at all three levels, expertise from front office professional that interacts with our families on a daily basis, and the leaders of some of our most valued partners, including La Plaza and Palisade, the United Way of Mesa County, and the Riverside Education Center. Thank you to Dr. Danny Medved, Jamie Chiro, Newt Klusmeyer, and Miranda Martinez for sharing your perspective from the schools. Also to Nellie Garcia, Zebulon Miracle, and Jack Curry for your advice based on your experiences leading your organizations and working with our community families. The purpose that we defined for our team this year was language take us straight for the strategic plan. We're focused on developing communication and leadership structures that will improve clarity to our students and families about how to take advantage of all the wonderful opportunities we have available in D51. Our goal this year is to develop and test a portfolio of communication tools that meet the diverse needs of our community. And tonight, we're excited to share what we've been able to accomplish so far and where we're headed for the rest of the 2023-2024 school year. I'm going to hand it over to Callie to start us off by sharing some compelling data.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so tonight we're going to start with some incredibly fresh data that we collected from our 2024 annual communication survey. So if you all remember, one of the initiatives within our priority area is to release an annual communication survey that will engage our staff, families, and community in the district's communication processes. So this is actually the first year of this survey, and we want this to serve as a baseline of information for where we currently are and where we need to go in order to get to that 3-year goal. And that 3-year goal is to have 75% of our families feel that they always or almost always receive adequate and timely information from the district. So we released the survey on January 19th. It was open for 2 weeks, and we closed it late last week. We had 1,569 total responses, and then you'll see the breakdown of those responses up on the screen. We're still really digging into the meat of this survey, but there are a few key data points that we do want to point out tonight. So the first one is that we are well on our way to meeting that goal of at least having 75% of our families feel that they always or almost always have access to adequate and timely information from the district. So we're sitting at right over 70%, 70.1 to be exact. But in that occasional category, so that orange category where you see 23.1, we actually consider those respondents somewhat neutral. So when you look at this graph, what you're really going to see is that we only have about 6.8% of people saying that they rarely or never receive communication from the district. So we're pretty confident that we can move that needle and have less and less of those people in that occasionally category and move them up to the almost always or always categories. We still obviously have some work left to do to reach our goal, but as we deaggregate the information, we will dive into the areas in which respondents shared that we are lacking in effective communication, and we will work to develop some processes that will support those areas. And so we also want to point out something that we're really excited about, which is very evident in the responses that we received from this survey. So if you look at the left side of the screen, there's a large desire from our community to have the website be easier to navigate. The majority of respondents relayed that they can only sometimes find what they need or are looking for. So as we all chuckle at this because we all know that this is something that is desperately needed and something that also came out of our communications audit. So we know through these responses that we're moving in the right direction. And then on the right, you will also see that the community is very interested in having an app option for our district, which is something we'll dive into in a little bit, but that's also something we're really excited about. And then the last piece of data from the survey we want to share is something that we will be working towards improving. So if you look at the screenshot on the left, you will see that most of the respondents rely on email and the superintendent weekly update for news regarding D51, and the website isn't really a high contender, so the website's that red box to the left of or I guess be the right of the blue. But when asked how important the following forms of communication were, so our messaging apps, social media, website, superintendent update, and local news, the majority of respondents reported that the website is the most important source of communication, but that's not necessarily where they are going to actually receive that communication or that information. So we all know that the website's hard to navigate. It's just too busy. And as we dive deeper into this data, we will be working on this. But right off the bat, what this tells you is that the website is our #1 priority. And then the community also wants to continue receiving information and communication from Dr. Hill. So that superintendent update was that second most important source of communication. And Dr. Hill consistently shares good news, updates, and information across the district and to our community, so we will work on enhancing all of the ways in which we communicate through that.
That update goes out through email, so shouldn't I get some of the points from the email? Or the pie? Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know how to respond to that.
That was a good point, Dr. Hill.
It's a good response.
I'm excited to, and we're going to share several tools that we've been working on this year. And the first few we're going to talk about is really highlighting how we are really trying to be intentional about reaching every student. So over the summer, we assembled an amazing task force to co-create a detailed action plan to guide our efforts in improving our family partnership infrastructure in D51. Our task force was composed of 27 dedicated individuals committed to supporting the success of youth. The members were a diverse group of stakeholders, including senior leadership, central administration, school leadership, and support staff in D51, as well as esteemed community professionals with expertise in youth mental health, family resource navigation, and cultural supports for individuals from diverse ethnic and language backgrounds. Additionally, we were fortunate to have active participation from a diverse group of parents from across the valley. Together, we designed the D51 Family and Community Partnership Roadmap, which encapsulates 3 strategic objectives along with corresponding strategies and metrics. This comprehensive plan serves as our guiding framework for fostering stronger partnerships between our schools, families, and communities. The task force convened on 5 occasions over the span of 5 months, during which we engaged in robust discussions and collaborative problem-solving sessions. Following each meeting, members were tasked with gathering input from their respective communities, including friends, families, coworkers, and neighbors. This inclusive approach ensured that we captured a broad spectrum of perspectives and considered multiple opinions and viewpoints throughout the roadmap's development process. The next tool I want to share is actually the first objective of the roadmap, and it directly addresses the feedback received from our communication survey, emphasizing the need to simplify our messaging to our families. To effectively address this objective, our task force developed a comprehensive strategy centered around the creation of a communication rubric. The purpose of this rubric, aptly named PACT, as an acronym symbolizing our commitment to intentional communication, is to streamline both internal and external communication efforts. The PACT rubric serves as a guiding framework to ensure that our communication is focused on conveying essential information in a manner that best serves our community's needs. It emphasizes clarity, relevance, and timeliness, aligning with the feedback we receive from our stakeholders. The rubric will be piloted this spring, being tested by select departments and schools within the district. This pilot phase will allow us to gather feedback and refine the rubric before its full implementation, beginning in the 24-25 school year. We are confident that this communication tool will yield positive outcomes and contribute to our aim of improving communication and connection with families. I brought a prop for this. An additional tool that I'm excited to share with you tonight is our new instant language assistant device. We call it the ILA. Oops. There. We've now delivered, trained, and implemented the instant language assistant translation device in 37 buildings across the district, including our 3 administration buildings, and the schools with the highest numbers of multilingual families. These helpful communication tools are programmed to provide language support in 110 of the most common languages spoken around the world, with many of them available in speech-to-text and text-to-speech formats. The ILA is essentially 2 tablets that are programmed to work in coordination to provide instant interpretation support And our valuable tool is to make sure that a family member that is not able to communicate in English has the opportunity to share important information with school offices or ask important questions and seek clarification from schools. We've also encouraged our schools to highlight this tool with their families and make sure that their families know that they are welcome and encouraged to have meaningful communication with their children's schools in their native language. They're pretty cool. They're very easy to use. All you really have to do is just select the language that comes with a guest side and a host side. So the guest would show up, select the language. If they pick Spanish, they have a wide variety of countries that they can choose. They can select their dialect, and then they will be prompted to communicate, and you can actually turn the voice on and listen, or you could turn it off and just read. But it's really a neat tool, and we are seeing positive results so far. All right, I think I'm going to pass it back to Callie.
Okay, so on one side of the house, we're working to ensure that each family in our district feels like they have an individualized connection with D51. And then on the other side, we're working to ensure that all families have access to adequate and timely information. So how do we do that? We are going to implement some universal communication strategies that address the diverse needs of all District 51 families by providing proactive information in an easily accessible way. One of the first ways we are going to do this is through our new comprehensive family resource guide, which is aimed at creating a smooth transition for new families to our district and providing valuable information for our current families. This guide will serve as a navigational tool, offering essential information for not only how to get involved, but also when, where, and how to access important tools and resources. It will be particularly useful for new families to our district because it will offer the guidance on how they can become active participants in their children's education. And for our existing families, the guide will serve as a convenient reference for important dates, information, and resources available throughout the year. So I put a couple of screenshots up there. The guide will be available in English and in Spanish. It will be available in all of our D51 offices and our schools, and then it will also have a digital version on our website. Really what this is going to do is it's going to ensure that new families to the district have the information that they're looking for kind of all in one spot. And then our current families also have information like school calendar, bell schedules, flow charts of who to contact in the district for when they need them throughout the year. And then another strategy for achieving this goal is one that we are really excited about. It's our website. So while we are excited to roll out our family resource guide this summer, we are also making big strides in improving and streamlining our digital platforms. In early fall, we formed a website steering committee to strategize the transformation of our website to be a one-stop shop for all D51 communication needs. Initially, the committee was comprised of D51 staff who helped us evaluate various website vendors, ultimately choosing one based on some key criteria, including a user-friendly interface for our staff, a streamlined navigation, various translation capabilities, and the addition of a mobile app. The committee then transitioned to a broader group consisting of community partners, teachers, school administrators, parents, and D51 central office staff who collaborated with the chosen vendor to design our new district and school sites. Having the committee actively participate in this process ensured our stakeholders' needs aligned with our strategic plan goals as we move forward. Additionally, we are excited to introduce a mobile app that will allow families to integrate information from multiple schools into one account. So if you have a child at an elementary school and you have a child at a middle school, you'll select those two schools, and then on your front page interface, those two schools and that information from each of the schools will be it will be a collaborative interface so that you can see information from both schools. So this is going to cater to our families who are on the go and who expressed a strong interest in this option, again, based on the feedback from our communications survey. So we're excited to share that by the end of the school year, the efforts of this committee will culminate in a brand new, fresh website and a new mobile app that will be user-friendly, efficient, and responsive to the diverse needs of our staff, families, and community. Fair.
Yeah, so those were the tools we chose to highlight tonight. It's your opportunity now to ask any questions or give us any feedback.
I looked at that, I'm sorry, I looked at that was it Pear Park? Mesa View. I thought it was amazing. I know you have to talk, you have to be careful, you got to speak slowly. Talk too fast, it misses, but I really like that you could go to the dialects from, if you speak Spanish, you can go from Mexico to Argentina to El Salvador. All those dialects, so the family can really hear what's going on. I think it's really excellent that it makes families that they're appreciated and they're welcome into the school. So I really like that a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Yeah, what's cool is that, and we're seeing more diverse Spanish-speaking families at District 51, especially recently. But what's cool is it's a smart, it has smart technology, and so it adapts as the more you use it to the language that you use, and it's pretty good about picking up on dialect and becoming more accurate over time. It's a pretty neat device.
So did we do a special, like, communication to families, letting them know that we now have these in our schools? And so if they've been hesitant to come and communicate with the school because they felt there was some frustration there, I'm just wondering, how did you let the families know that we now have this opportunity for them?
Yeah, so when we implement them, the first thing we did was go to the buildings and teach the office staff how to use the device. But then we encouraged the office staff to let families know that, hey, we have this device, it's available, we want you to come in. We really want that message to be, hey, I heard from several people that parents were getting the message, hey, sorry, but we can't help you because we don't speak your language here in the office. And so we said, we want to make sure that that's never a message that parents hear again. And so we encourage schools to make sure and let families know that they have this device available. We're also we do a monthly meeting here at the boardroom in Spanish. We call it Noche Informativa, and we've trained all the parents who attend regularly, and we get anywhere from 30 to 50 parents that show up to these meetings. We've trained them on how to use it and to be expecting to use the device whenever they go to the school.
And I know we've put it in the Friday update too, which 17% of people get their news from. And that goes out in Spanish as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't go out in other languages, but it does go out in English and Spanish. So we did push that out earlier in the fall, I think.
Is that something that'll be a resource that might be able to be implemented during parent-teacher conferences as well? Or will we have that extensive availability at some point? Or is it just going to be like one device per school at this point? Or
at this point, we have it designed to kind of stay in the office and really be available when parents show up. It's meant to be a parent communication tool. But we also, we don't want a student with zero English to be at school and have something come up and not be able to communicate with, the people they need to communicate. So we've instructed our schools that they could definitely use it for language needs. When it comes to parent-teacher conferences, I can see where that it might make sense, but I think it really depends on the content of the conference. What we've instructed schools and what we tell when we train our staff about requesting interpretation services, we tell them to be really mindful and to put on their parent hat. And as a parent, if you want to hear, from a machine, or if you want to hear from a human, and if you have a concern, or if you're going to be sharing information about a learning need or a behavior thing or whatever, we ask that you use our interpretation services and get a person who can come and do some in-person translation and make sure, because one of the things that these have there's always a little bit of technology embedded into it, and so there's always possibilities for like miscommunication and misunderstandings, and we wouldn't want that if a parent's upset or stressed out about something they heard or something their child told them.
They're also not cheap, and so we've, Tracy and the team have utilized getting grant funds to be able to provide the ones that they have now. So yeah, it'd be great to be able to expand them at some point, but they're definitely an investment for each one. So we're excited to at least have them in the buildings, and they can be utilized if they need them. So.
Great. Any other questions? Well, thank you both for the presentation. That was really great information this evening. We're super excited.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, next we have our Grand Junction High School construction update, and right with that will be the Grand Junction High School Academy, excuse me. I need my glasses. Academies, not academics.
All right. Hello, everyone. Once again, I think I've met most of you, but my name is Micah Adams. I work for Dynamic Program Management, the owner's rep for the high school construction project. Here with me, I've got Eddie Mort with the school district and Peter Eisenogel with the Blythe Group. So we'll go ahead and jump into things. As usual, we've got just an overview of the schedule and budget. Things are going according to schedule, and things are going according to budget. So far, we've got about 141 committed to date through December, with about 95 million of that being expended, with local expenditures being about 2/3 of that, which once again, we hit on this every month, or every time we give a presentation, but that's just fantastic to see that percentage on a project this size. So you see there on the completion of scheduled days, you see that the star there that we are rapidly approaching, that's the start of school here this coming fall. And like I said earlier, everything is going according to plan to get students in on time. So a couple recently completed items you'll see there are kicked off moving coordination meetings. Had an all-staff meeting with Grand Junction High School teachers here last week to start running through what move out is going to look like. And they've really commenced phase one, which is a purging of materials no longer needed and starting to pack up textbooks and everything that maybe aren't in use right now. So it's a heavy lift. So we wanted to start as soon as possible on that. As you'll see there as well, the change order was recently accepted to resurface the track. So that was an exciting step for everybody. Next, there's a lot in progress, but a couple things to highlight. As you've seen, parking lots out on the west side of the site, FCI has started work on that, trying to get as much done as they can here before school gets out, because as soon as it does, it's going to be go, go, go to get the building torn down and turned into a parking lot before school starts in the fall. One other thing to mention there is, I believe here tomorrow, there's a bunch of rooftop units showing up to get set. And they'll be working on getting those started and going and on so that they can start putting in the wood flooring in the gyms. Upcoming here next week, actually, we've got our first architectural punch walk starting first floor of the classroom wing. We'll be walking through with a big group and really starting to pin down, okay, what work is remaining, what are little fixes that need to happen here or there, and putting just a pen to paper, creating a list of what else is out there. So that's a big step in the process, a good milestone to hit. So we're excited to be starting that. Now that, like I said, that's just kicking off the process. We'll be doing that here all the way for the next couple months, but it's good to start. Kitchen equipment is showing up here soon. Operable partitions, like I said, wood floor in the gyms. And then we've got furniture showing up in May, as well as shop equipment and all that specialty equipment. So, got a couple pictures for you guys of exciting things happening in the building, from lockers in the corridors to casework, brick veneer in the auditorium, teacher workrooms, fume hoods, and some exciting construction metrics over on the left side if you're interested in those. Next, we've got a video for you. I do apologize, music isn't, I know, I ran into some issues, had to go with what's free, so. Start a dance party. Yeah. So we're gonna start a dance party. All right.
Well done.
Apparently, I need to learn how to fade the music out. So, yeah. So that's an overview of the project. What we have here is just a kind of intro into Jory and his team. They'll be getting up here to talk to you about the academy model that was really integral in the design of this building. And so, with that, I guess I'll look for questions before we turn it over to Jory.
Anybody have any questions?
Great. Anything from you guys?
Nope, thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yes. Ooh. We always look forward to the music choice.
All right, good evening. Good to see you guys. Thank you for your service. I know we've all met, but I'll introduce myself. I'm privileged to be the principal of Grand Junction High School, and boy, it's awesome to follow Micah and the gang there. Yeah, every day that we are in our current school and looking to that new one, we're inspired and energized just to continue to move our vision and our mission forward. So that's what we're here to talk to you about. With me, I have one of our amazing assistant principals, Jared Burek, and he really leads this academy committee team. And then also one of our highly skilled math teachers and admin intern, Megan Foster. So they're going to help me with this presentation. I want to talk to you first about Grand Junction High School is, by necessity, a comprehensive high school. And comprehensive high schools in America are excellent because they offer a plethora of choices to students. Students can come into that school, and there's a lot of different avenues they can take. The challenge that the leaders in the community of that school have is to create meaning in that school so that kids don't come in and fall through cracks, get lost, and really lose inspiration. So our goal is to have a comprehensive high school with all of these different options, and we offer so much to our students, while at the same time providing them a personalized experience that will inspire them, intrinsically motivate them to continue to look forward to be our D51 graduates. So that's really what this academy model is about. It's about providing those pathways where every one of our students can see him or herself fitting in and saying, here's where I want to go with my life. And we tell them, we just want you to be the best at whatever you're going to be. And we want to provide that pathway to help make that happen. So a little bit about the academy model, some of the nuts and bolts. So first of all of our students are in our academy model. And this is the first year that we've really unveiled it on the student level. Students are organized into different groups, and right now they're in academy class together. We'll talk about that in a bit. They're in classes, they have activities, and we have activities around different career clusters. Within each of our academies, there's different pathways, and you can see more about that in the academy program we've shared with you. And we currently have 4 academies, and within each of those academies, there's 4 or 5 different pathways for students to follow. There's so much great about our academy model and the vision that it's providing. One thing I will say is it really aligns well with our district strategic plan. It also really aligns well with our PDSA process and all the things that we do within our district PL and our school PL around goal setting. So these are our 3 big goals in our school this year. One around academic rigor. We call that our aim 1. Community culture is our second aim. And then third is right around that career connectedness, which as I talked about a moment ago, really fits well with the graduate profile, as well as our academy model. So we want to create that more intentional high school experience for our students. It's really what it all comes down to. So to talk a little more about that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Burek.
Thanks, Jory, and thank you all again for having us here this evening. So I'm going to dive in a little deeper with you into the academies at Grand Junction High School and try to give you all a picture of what that means for students' experience at Grand Junction High School. As Jory said, with that goal of this model creating a more individualized experience for students through their high school years. So as Jory mentioned, there's 4 academies. You can see those up there: Arts and Humanities, Environmental Science, Technology and Engineering, Business Communications and Entrepreneurship, and Health Sciences and Human Services. Within each of those academies, there's 4 to 5 pathways. Those are the flags pictured up there. And like Jory said, as you have a chance to break into that program guide that we gave you all, you can actually see that each of those academies has a section and each pathway has a page. And on that pathway sheet, a pathway is defined by coursework, mostly electives that students can take pertaining to that pathway, as well as pathway experiences, which are things like clubs, it can be job shadowing, internships, are great options around the district like Career Center and CMU Tech. So those pathways is really what defines that and it gives the students that choice as to what they want to pursue at Junction High School. So I'm going to take a couple minutes here to kind of talk about where this work began and where it's headed. So the blank spots up there for the current school year and into the future, I'll fill those in the next couple slides. And even though the timeline up here starts at 2021, 2022, the idea for this academy model high school at Grand Junction High actually started back in 2018-19. The idea kind of came to life when a group of teachers, actually many district personnel, we toured high schools over on the Eastern Slope, and there's a few academy model high schools over there, and we were very inspired. We even got the work off the ground in the following school year, 2019-2020, but we all know what happened in 2020. So that COVID, that really paused the work for a couple years. And then pick it up on the timeline here in 2021, as we just saw, the new building, right? The new building passed that fall. That inspired a group of teachers actually to begin meeting in the spring of 2022. The new building is designed off of that academy model, so the teachers wanted to bring the idea back to life. So that was really cool to see that our teachers took it upon themselves to bring this idea back to the forefront of our work. So that leads into last school year. Oh, sorry, you're good. Yeah, last school year, our goal was to define this. What are the systems and structures going to look like for this Academy Model High School at Junction High? The teachers in the building said we want to have a group of leaders selected to do the work. So, Megan's going to talk to you in a moment. She's an academy coordinator. Christine Spillane, Brenda Pomeroy, Jen Campbell-Wilson, they're in the audience here, as well as numerous other teachers, one of which, Audrey Newmiller, is now an assistant principal at Grand Mesa. We had a great group of teacher leaders, counselors doing this work last year. It was a lot of hours of work, with one of the main outcomes being that program guide you're holding, to really define what are those pathways going to look like at Grand Junction High School. How do we rebrand our school as an academy model? Okay, going to the current school year. So this is what's currently happening at Grand Junction High School. That I want to give you kind of an image of how is this academy model changing the experience for students at our school. So as Jory said, every student belongs to one of those 4 academies. They get choice in that. So they get to put their top choices down, and nearly every student gets their top choice, or at least their second choice. And then within that academy, they also have an Academy Time advisory class. So we rebranded our advisory class at Junction to call it Academy Time, so that students would understand that the focus of that class is that academy they're a part of. And you see up there it says they really focus on their individual career and academic plans. That's always been a requirement, in our district, in the state, but that class now makes that really intentional for students to work on that through that class. They do some career exploration. Megan's going to talk to you a little bit more about our big career fair called Workforce Development Day that many of you may have attended last fall. The Tiger portfolio, that's one of the things we're most excited about, or at least I am. You're good. The Tiger portfolio is a digital portfolio that reflects that ICAP process that students engage in through that Academy Time class at Grand Junction High School. That Tiger portfolio is going to have artifacts of their work. It's going to have resumes. It's really going to be a demonstration of their post-secondary readiness, and they're going to be able to take it with them after they finish at Grand Junction High School. And then finally, currently in these last 2 weeks, students are using those pathway sheets that you see in that program guide to select classes for next year. So that's where they're already becoming more intentional about, what are my interests, what are my future goals, and how can I start to pursue those and explore those at Grand Junction High School. I want to stop for a second and be clear. We're not saying that students have to, be focused on a major and they're pigeonholed into that. That's the question I get a lot. They have plenty of time in their schedule to actually select multiple pathways to pursue, so that they're really exploring their interests. But for those students that are really focused on, some of those goals for after high school, they can dive really deep into that. Okay, go ahead. So what is this going to look like into the future, right? We're working on that always and currently. Some of the stuff you see on this slide, we're currently working with our instructional leadership team to create a 3 to 5 year outlook, a 3 to 5 year plan for this work. So some of the ideas up there are not necessarily set in stone yet, but they're in progress. As Jory said, though, what is established is that we will be focused on academic rigor, community and culture, and having a career-connected experience at Grand Junction High School. You can see that some of the things up there do reflect the D51 strategic plan and the D51 graduate profile. So we're really excited that this work, as we focus on our mission and vision at Grand Junction High School, it in turn reflects the District 51's strategic plan. So kind of bringing it full circle for my time here, again, the timeline there, This is going to continue into the future. I mean, the Academy Model High Schools we've visited, Pooter High School, if you're interested, in Fort Collins is one that we, partner with a lot. I mean, they're in their 15th year and still learning. So that implementation timeline, it will continue. It'll be focused on our mission and vision, as Jory said, with that goal of having that individualized experience for students, really focused on self-actualization through their time at Grand Junction High School, and reflecting the District 51 strategic plan, which I'll move it over to Megan to talk a little bit more about some of those details.
So, as Jared acknowledged, the D51 strategic plan is really woven throughout our whole academy model. Every component of that plan we see in different ways with what we're doing. As far as it comes to preparing and supporting our students, we're really emphasizing career and college readiness as well as our academic rigor. Our students will be cohorted in smaller groups in certain classes, which allows them to have a smaller community and see more familiar faces and be with others who share common interests and goals for careers. Our staff have been really instrumental in getting the academy model launched off the ground. We've had ongoing training throughout the year utilizing our early release, using in-service days and other opportunities to train our staff in the Academy Time Advisory Program that we're rolling out. And we really want to celebrate our staff for their flexibility and their willingness to embrace a completely new way of looking at high school education. And finally, we have engaged and supportive community partners. They're really essential for an academy model high school to run well. We utilize our community partners in a number of ways. I'll talk about one of our major ways, Workforce Development Day, in just a minute. And we're looking forward to inviting more partners into our school, as well as bringing our students out into the community to work with our partners. Workforce Development Day was an all-day school-wide event we had on October 3rd. It's something that we were really proud of, really excited about. You can see in this picture here, we have students meeting with employees from St. Mary's Hospital and learning more about life in medicine and what medical careers look like. This job fair that these students are attending, that was really our headlining event. It featured about 75 tables that exposed students to a variety of careers sorted by our 4 academies. We couldn't have done Workforce Development Day without our community partners. We had 125 people join in a variety of ways. So both our career fair, as well as we had volunteers come in and share about their careers through Pitch Your Profession. We had community members do mock interviews with our students. We had a panel about employability skills. We had a panel about military careers. There was a great diversity in the opportunities that students were exposed to through Workforce Development Day. In the future, with college and career readiness being such a critical component of the academy model, we're really looking forward to integrating these kinds of activities into academy time on a regular basis, as well as sending our students out into the community for job shadowing and other work-based learning experiences.
As principal, I always know the indicator of a really great grassroots staff initiative like Workforce Development Day, because those who are directly involved in it bring their entire family, their spouse, their parents to come help us on that day. And I think some of that was the 129. So thanks. We felt like it was appropriate to talk a little bit about the new school in regard to our academy vision. Given that you were getting an update on the new school, and I know you saw this graphic in the room configuration once already, but we wanted to just highlight this just to show, and really, I mean, you're going to be able to see this firsthand within months, but this new facility it really is going to fit, and it's really going to meet the needs of our learners and our model so well. The flexible learning and teaching areas in the hallway, as well as just the general makeup of the room and the collaborative spaces, We're going to be able to do things in this school that we can only dream of in our current facility. So we're really thankful for that. All right, that's the end of our presentation to you. We'd like to thank you for all your support of our entire community and of Grand Junction High School. Do you have any questions for us?
So, so right now I know that a lot of your counselors handle scheduling and things like that. My understanding is that the kids are going to be getting this kind of outline in the beginning, and then they kind of pick their path, and then they go and talk to a counselor and set up their schedule or something like that. Is that how this, and it'll start from 9th grade all the way through 12th grade, like it'll be inclusive throughout their 4 years. Is that correct? A lot of questions at once, sorry. I should have broke those down.
Starting last week, we launched our first Academy Time lesson on course selection and scheduling. So all of our students had the same PowerPoint shared by their teachers that walked them through what building an 8-period day looks like, including core classes and then delving into electives and ensuring that your graduation requirements get met. So we have our students referencing the different pathways in their program guide to give them inspiration and ideas for what elective courses to select. And then they'll build out their 8-period schedule on their own with their Academy Time teacher and their counselor there to support.
Like Megan mentioned, it's a huge celebration to our teachers because while we're asking them to purge their classrooms and prepare for a move, right? They're filling buckets and getting all that ready. We're also asking them to take on new things like, lessons where they're partnering with counseling to support student scheduling. So like Megan said, our teachers are taking on a lot with this, and we applaud them.
All right, I applaud you because you're teaching the children, you're teaching the students how to make their own decisions about their path. Yeah. So that's super important because when it starts in high school, then they can make those decisions in college. So you're building them and you're giving them that educational path that they're going to need in the future. And there's not going to be somebody necessarily standing beside them, helping them and holding their hand. So good job with that.
Thank you.
Question. Can they be in 2 pathways at the same time if they want to take something like biology, but they also want to do welding?
Yes, absolutely. It's actually, that's the question we get the most, and I want to make sure that's really clear. Exactly. They can do multiple pathways. We'll have students who will be in our high school of business, which, we've had that magnet program for a number of years at Grand Junction High School. And then, when we designed this, I would have kids in the high school of business say, well, I came to Grand Junction High School because I really wanted to pursue business, but now I see this, health sciences pathway, and it looks really neat. Or I might also want to be an engineer, and I want to have a business, have business experience and study engineering, so they can choose multiple. The other thing I see a lot is students who are just completely embedded in performing arts, right? They've played an instrument all the way through middle school. They're a part of multiple performance groups, but they also have other pursuits they want to take on, academically other than that. So they can do the performing arts pathway, but then they can also do health sciences or something different as well. Absolutely, yeah.
So if they switch pathways, does that slow down when they would be able to graduate, or will they still be able to graduate the same amount of time?
So their graduation requirements are not different, right? It's still 25 credits, so no, they would still be able to graduate on time. And we're kind of vetting as we build this, at what time point, if a student, say in their junior year, wanted to switch, pathways, it depends on what courses they took. They have that conversation with their counselor and kind of look at, okay, is it possible to switch to this other pathway and still complete it and be like a pathway completer? We have to kind of see how that works. Obviously, if they switch their senior year in the spring, it's kind of hard to fit all those classes in at that point. So it kind of depends on the timing. But yeah.
This sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you for the update on the Academy's model. I know we probably have had a lot of people wondering what it's going to look like, and great to hear that you guys already have started with it. So that's clarity from the board standpoint, because I thought we were going to start it with the new building. So I'm glad to hear that you guys have already been doing it, and sounds like the new building will just be complementary to what you guys are doing. So well done.
I want to make sure we recognize Ms. Pomeroy because she was a White Ice Award winner this weekend, so we can give her a round of applause for. The only thing I want to mention, I think this is great. because I know even when I met with my student advisory group there, they had some questions, and this answers a lot of the questions, even some of the ones that were raised tonight. So I'm glad y'all put this this guidebook together. And then, yeah, just to reiterate what board members have said tonight, and that y'all have said as well, it takes really strong leadership and a strong staff to be able to take on this big of a shift in the middle of moving into a new building. And so just commend y'all and everybody in the audience and your staff as well for taking this on. I think it's going to be a really great opportunity for kids, and you'll be able to make adjustments along the way. But when we talk about choice and options for families, this is just going to be another great one for our district. So just really commend y'all for the work you're doing. So thank y'all.
I have one more, I'm sorry. I just wondered, how are you working this with your feeder schools so that your 8th graders will know how it goes, so they'll be aware of it when they go to 9th grade?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. We actually go out to the feeder schools, our counselors do, and we really promote what Academies is about. And that's generally their first introduction into the Academy model is this current year. We do have aspiration of actually starting it earlier in middle school as well, so that they're well aware of what they're leading into. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, the board needs a bit of a break. We had an executive session at 4, so we're going to take just a 5-minute break and be back to resume business. Thank you. All righty, well, thank you, everyone. We're back from our break. So we now have our middle school ELA resource recommendation. So Jackie, you and your team, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening.
I'm Jackie Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, and I'm joined tonight by Nikki Johnston, our Secondary Director of Curriculum and Professional Learning, by Kristen Gross, our 612 English Language Arts Content Specialist, and by Amy DeShaw, our K-12 Social Studies Content Specialist. And so we have actually two resource recommendations. Firstly, English Language Arts at the middle school level, and then high school social studies to follow. So you'll hear from Kristen firstly, we'll take your questions, and then Amy to follow with social studies.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. I left the IRSTE, the Instructional Resource Selection Team, yesterday, and they were in a very excited and celebratory mood. And there's a lot of energy already in making this recommendation. So our Instructional Resource Selection Team was made up of 17 members. We tried to make sure that we had 2 from every middle school, with the exception of one who just didn't have the capacity to have 2 people out of the building for the number of days that we needed. On that team, we also had a principal and an assistant principal representing. We had a multi-tiered system of support, an MTSS specialist. We also had a gifted and talented coach there with us, the coordinator from Dual Immersion Academy, and then we also had a culturally and linguistically diverse educator among us. We've met over 6 full days, starting in October and ending just yesterday. And we also did some activities with teachers. All of them got to exposure, as well as special educators at our January in-service activities. In that series of in-service activities, some of the learning that the IRSTE's been doing throughout the process came forward. And so we did some embedded learning around literacy accelerators and the What Works Clearinghouse's recommendation for interventions in grades 4 through 9. So really, our team was tasked with going in and looking for a comprehensive English language arts instructional material that would align to the standards as well as support research-based instruction, reading and writing now being integrated together rather than separate, and some Tier 1 supports for all learners. The last adoption was in spring of 2019. There was a writing resource that was adopted, and then in spring of 2020, a reading resource and a word study and vocab supplement was also purchased. So over the course of those 6 meetings, the team really started first with examining performance data of the district and diving into the District 51 strategic plan and thinking about how middle school teachers and the ELA role helps to meet the needs of the graduate profile. Just because we're not necessarily those high school years, it doesn't mean that they're not formative on that path towards the graduation profile, just like we would think of elementary being a foundational piece as well. Then they studied the standards as well as the research around the middle school literacy and science of learning to really establish what look-fors we wanted to find in a high-quality resource. And then they engaged in really deep study. They had vendor presentations, and then they did some detailed scoring, before making decisions and making this recommendation tonight. So the recommended resource we have is Savvis My Perspectives, and it is actually a 2025 edition. We got hot off the press editions delivered to us, and then the digital platform came live in January, so we were able to explore that as well. So we would adopt consumable student editions for grades 6 through 8, as well as digital licenses for their learning management system called Savvis Realize, but it also has integration with things like Google Classroom or Schoology. But that is where all the digital tools and resources would also be housed that complement what students would be doing within their student edition, as well as offer a lot of the differentiation tools that we would have. So before you or in your materials, you have the lengthier list of the rationale, but just to highlight some of those pieces of why Savvis appealed to the team. And just so you know, when I say the team, we had 15 members, 2 had to be absent on the final vote yesterday, but had submitted their feedback previously. And out of those 15 yesterday, we had 100% consensus. It was pretty powerful to see the teachers really come together and have that momentum going forward of this is not like it wasn't a 50-50 shot. This is all teachers were really appreciative of this, and they looked at some really high quality resources. It was a tough decision there towards the end when you got to the top 3, but they really, really found some excitement yesterday in what they found within. So Of course, it's rigorous and it's standards-aligned learning experiences, and we also made sure that it helped to match that D51 strategic plan in our teaching and learning framework, but also that it's really systematic and explicit instruction in reading and writing and language, and that there are also many opportunities for speaking and listening embedded within that. We really wanted something that was strong Tier 1, and there are additionally some Tier 2 tools that are in there as well, but really we wanted instruction that could personalize for inclusive and differentiated teaching for all of our learners. There's an assessment variety that goes everywhere from like a quick write all the way through a process paper. There's even some media tools where students can make some unit and end of unit projects to show their mastery in a variety of ways. It also, one beautiful thing, and nobody steered them this way, they knew I was Switzerland, but they've landed on a resource that aligns. It's a 612 program. So now we are aligned to the high school. So there's some really powerful opportunities with that decision happening where we can have vertical alignment for curriculum and some even professional learning opportunities. It's a really interdisciplinary text. It's not just text and it's not just short stories or nonfiction. There's all kinds of articles, videos, all of the like in there. We found rigor, we found scaffolds, we found extensions, we found language supports. They're high quality texts and there's really engaging activities for students throughout. Another appeal that this program had was the audio support to help support learners at our community open and house. We actually had a grandparent who in conversations with her, I figured out that I student taught her son 23 years ago. But he was vision impaired. And so they were really appreciative of the support they had within the district, and we had all of his materials turned into Braille, or he had a magnifying piece that would help with having access, but to see the powerful access tools that existed within this. But the audio support also, not just for students who might have a visual disability, but really for students who have those gaps in reading, and knowing how much that audio support can help students with that first read to engage with the text if they might be some grade levels behind. And then there's also point of use translation, which is a really great tool for our multilingual learners because it had I think it was like 60 languages, and even some of those had the audio as well, but it's point of use. So students are still engaging with the text, with their peers, the English text first, and then are using those as point of use when there's a word or a phrase or a sentence or a paragraph that they struggle with. And we also saw some really authentic cross-curricular connections. A big component of what we were looking for in the science of reading is that kids need more and more background knowledge. That helps us with our literacy. And so whenever we can be building knowledge, it's powerful. And this new edition really, really makes sure that we're doing that with articles, short stories, podcasts. It's partnered up with ListenWise, current events through NPR. So these are, I'm going to tell you, pre-negotiated costs. As I told my team, this is before Jackie has jackied them. So knowing that that's still on the table, that really this was just their quotes that they sent us as well as their professional learning packages. So for teacher resource materials, they throw those in gratis. But one thing I did want to highlight is we didn't just ask for ELA teacher additions. We wanted to make sure that all of our SPED teachers, January in-service was powerful. And so having those SPED teachers right there and having their own teacher edition, make sure it's really co-teaching and collaborative and thinking about how can we support all of our learners. So we made sure that we included 30 per grade level, which is more educators than we have at each grade level, but that includes our special educators. Student resource materials, we're looking at about 4,200 times 6 years. So they're consumables of about 1,400 per grade. That's every student will have one. Knowing that students might take them home and lose them, another cool component is that they're hole punched. So you can pull out pages, put them in a binder, keep the consumable within the classroom. But every 6 years would be paid for up front. So that's why that price tag seems rather hefty at $806,000. Well, that also includes the digital licenses, and they have a piece called Revision Assistant that actually helps students through the writing process and gives feedback and helps the teacher match rubric feedback with what students might need to do in editing. So that was a nice component as well. And each grade level will get to land on 2 novels or included per student, for student edition. So we will have those and be able to fill out some classroom libraries and look for some opportunities for book clubs, lit circles, and some other uses of those to supplement, not supplement, to be implemented within the units as well. And then the shipping fees, Google to PowerPoint sometimes doesn't play nicely, but you can see down there, it's in the black, is $80,000, which is really a lot. So that's gonna be something we negotiate with them. Because these aren't hardcover, they're softcover, they should be lighter. In terms of the professional learning, you're gonna see 2 numbers. The top one is the vendor-provided program activation and implementation essentials, and that's just to get you because it's a new structure. So it's really their systematic plan for instruction as well as the digital learning that you would need to be able to engage as a teacher. And then they offer up some job embedded services, everything from coaching to site visits as well. So that package is up at the top. And then we are excited to also partner with Strive, like elementary has been doing. And so really to think about literacy consultation and supporting some literacy goals, having an instructional framework, engaging in school leadership and LCDII support through things like NICS, and also having professional learning that's really geared around those evidence-based practices, and even having site visits and walkthroughs. So your total investment, pre-negotiated, is a little over $1 million. But if you could have been there yesterday at the end to see the excitement on teachers, they were reinvigorated. We ended the day with a toast and we circled up, and just the emotion that you saw on those teachers' faces as they are just really, really excited for what the future might hold for learners was very, very powerful.
Do you have questions for us about the literacy recommendation that sits in front of you, middle school English language arts? Savvis is the vendor, and you've just heard from Kristen all the reasons why we're excited about this recommendation.
Question I have, if you could just explain to me a little bit more, how the translation support is working with like the point of view.
So basically, it's Google Translation is baked into the platform. So a nice piece is whatever is in the textbook is also in the digital platform. And there's an audio bar at the top where you can hit play, and you can actually slow down and speed up the speed with which it reads out loud. And there's a highlight function where each word is highlighted. But if, say, I was a student who needed translation support, you can go in and have it preset up in the settings, but there's a number of languages, and you can highlight, and then it uses Google Translate, and it puts a box right next to the English to show you what that word or phrase or sentence said. And then for some languages, not for all, they can click a play button, and then they can have the audio read to them in that language as well.
Kristen, you mentioned that that's helpful for the first read. You know, our standards are still the English language arts standards, and so that's a scaffold, a way to access the text and get into the text to support students and teachers before reading it a second or third time at grade level rigor, mastering the standards in English language arts.
I really like that. So when the student is reading the text, does the teacher put in what translation support that child is going to need, or does the child put that in?
The child would put it in. I don't think that the teacher can go in and do it from their level. It would be the student, but of course I can go and shoulder partner with Nikki right now if she needed that support and say, hey, here's how we can go about setting that up. And then once it's set up within the digital textbook, it saves those settings. So Nikki would have to go in and change it to a different language to lose the settings that we set up together.
Thank you.
So what resource are we currently using, and how long have we used it for?
Our current resource is units of study, and one of Kristen's first slides listed 2019 through 2020, and that's complicated because even prior to those years, many schools had already purchased units of study, either the writing components or the writing and the reading components, and so it wasn't formalized or official until 2019. And that was then, so some buildings already had materials, other buildings were supported with units of study materials. You're all familiar with the changes that we've made at elementary as we've realigned to research around reading, that our state has supported us with a lot of resources. And in fact, that's how we began our partnership with Strive. They're a CDE recommended consultant for early literacy. And you might wonder if then they're qualified to serve at secondary, but they do a lot of work at secondary and have had great success at the middle school and high school level. And so for part of our professional learning, we hope to partner with them again too. But Units of Study is our current resource that we're now replacing.
So do you think this will complement what we've adopted at the elementary school level?
Yeah, Kristen's team looked closely at HMH Into Reading, which also has a middle school version, and then this Savvis version partners with what we've adopted at high school. And so the connection here is K-12. The science of reading is, to use Kristen's words, baked into those resources. They're developed with that research in mind. And there was no issue with her selection committee. They could have confidence that all of the resources they reviewed were of high quality in terms of that research alignment. Those are only the materials that you vetted and viewed. And so it's not the same resource that we have at elementary, but it still partners and couples with that well.
Is there parts of this that you feel are, and forgive me if this is kind of not in the right realm, but that would, I guess, amplify or bring learners along that are lagging behind? So is there, I guess, is it baked into the cake, or into the resource that there's parts that would help lift kids who maybe have struggled, and I wondered, does it help our educators or is there still additional work that, I know there's always additional work and time that we need to spend with those students, but just wondering if the resource just helps, with that part of it.
That's the purpose of this resource adoption, is to accelerate our growth and achievement in literacy. And so when Amy presents in a minute, you'll see that the last resource adoption in social studies was 2008. So this is a much shorter cycle in English language arts because of our program evaluation, because we haven't seen the growth and achievement with our current resource that we would expect to see over time. And there's really little time to waste. There's no time to waste. And so this is about accelerating our growth and achievement in reading. One of the big shifts, Kristen named it, we want to build more background knowledge. We want to make sure students are accessing grade level text and that they're challenged to access grade level text. That's why the scaffolds are important, but it's not in lieu or in replacement of that grade level text. And then again, that's why we're partnering with Strive for those strategies to accelerate literacy. Yep.
So how long do we give ourselves if we adopt a resource and we are not seeing the outcomes we want? Like, what is our time frame? 2-3 years, or what kind of data do we need to know whether something's working?
That's the question, right? It depends. It's what access do you have to data and in what windows. And so in elementary grades, we're accessing data at beginning of year, mid-year, and end of year that's pretty reliable and consistent. And we can see those gains already mid-year with the shifts that we've made in elementary. At middle school, we don't have the same suite of assessments. We have a different suite of assessments. And so we have to look at those together. We have to look at NWA combined with CMAS, and we do the same in elementary. We have internal assessments that we use as measurements, and then we pull program evaluation data, not only from those student measures over time, but data from teachers. So that feedback from the field is really, really important. We're running program evaluation surveys right now at all grade levels, and we need that too. That's an important component of it. So you would expect to see changes soon, right away in 6 months, but there's also an implementation a dip or slide often, and a lot of this is new learning for educators in our system.
So and correct me if I'm wrong, but so in paying for this, they're guaranteeing, so we have access to it for 6 years, or is that, am I?
Yeah, all of our cycles are 6-year cycles since the mill in 2017.
Okay.
And so a cycle could be shorter or longer depending on program evaluation.
Okay.
So an example of that is elementary math. We're at the end of a cycle for elementary math. So the committee that would review that data is the CRGC, the Curriculum Resource Governance Committee. And we'd look at growth and achievement recently in math, and we'd look at the program evaluation data to determine if in that cycle we would go back for readoption or if we'd stick with the resources that we have. The key here are cycles of improvement. Cycles of improvement coupled with data, or what I'm terming program evaluation. And program evaluation led us here to this place, knowing that we need a new adoption to support literacy for secondary.
Thank you.
Yep.
Angela, did you have? I didn't mean to steal all your questions.
Yeah. And again, these are
You're on the same
pre-negotiated
wavelength.
costs.
Well, I think, and we've had these discussions, is, curriculum resource adoption is expensive, obviously.
It is.
You can see, and kudos to you, because I know that you really do try to work a bargain with them. But again, it's still a big price tag regardless, right? It is a resource, it's books, it's shipping alone is crazy. So I think that from, a board perspective, we're looking at how often are you changing a resource? Because it's twofold, right? One, if it's not working, you don't really have time, or you don't want to take too much time to course correct. But secondly, there's another outlay of funds for an additional resource. And so I think that's kind of the crux of the whole thing, right, is you're hoping it's a great resource because of the outlay of funds that you're going to be putting out there too.
Yep.
So
In the first 2 years, we look for those results, and then in years 3 through 5, that's a different system for program evaluation, to echo what you're saying. And of course, we're dependent here on mill dollars for resource adoption in District 51. Prior to 2017, there wasn't a source of funding to support consistent and systemic resource adoption, certainly not in cycles, nothing of the magnitude since then.
So I have just one other question. You referenced one source for current events. Are they using just that one source?
So it's a program called ListenWise. It's NPR podcasts that the company has aligned to units, so they're topical to what kids might be reading within their class of units. There's not, as far as I know, any other current events pieces. Other programs that we looked at had different components. Like Study Sync had one called Blasts, but this is the one that they have for this one, and it's national, and it's aligned to the textbook, so it's not just like whatever's hot today. Like, they wouldn't listen to this necessarily, like Toby Keith passing away today, or it's really aligned to whatever the unit themes were.
I guess my concern with that is just getting information just sort of from one angle and not a multitude of different angles, especially in current events. So that just concerns me a little bit.
And just what I've reviewed of it and previewed of it before, it's not like a full NPR story. It's more of like a short snippet, and it's really about the speaking and listening standards and students engaging in those, as opposed to, it's not usually anything from that argumentative angle. That's saved more for the topics within the book that do have both perspectives. These are more for that speaking and listening piece, because a lot of times people forget that sometimes the standards of evaluating an argument is made through hearing somebody without having the text in front of you. And so that's really like the stretch of what that program is trying to do. And it is it's not baked into the daily lesson plans or the unit plans. It's there as a component to bring in one more text, one more view. So they really are engaging in lots of different views within that unit. It just might not be that NPR has two people talking within that.
And we run curriculum teams of teachers then come together to support us in implementation and writing guidance in our UCIA. So if that surfaced as a concern,
Okay.
we'd address it through our curriculum teams. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to assure our community that we're being really broad
Right.
in what we're presenting to the students that way.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions for the middle school? Great, thank you for that. So, all right, then I guess we're moving into high school social studies.
Social studies.
Okay, does this work? I am really excited to be here tonight representing my resource selection team and their recommendations. They would liken our work to climbing Mount Everest as Nikki rushes through our slides. That's how it felt. Now you can go forward. Our resource selection team was represented by 1 to 2 teachers from every high school of our comprehensive high schools, and 4 to 8, 9, the exception being our. We also had a high school counselor, a culturally, linguistically, and diverse teacher, and a special education teacher. We met 7 full days from August to February, and for 2 different high school in-services, all of the high school teachers were involved in part of our selection process. We were tasked with looking for core social studies instructional materials aligned to the Colorado Academic Standards in Social Studies. You can see there we have 5 areas of our standards, and we have 3 credits for graduation. We wanted to provide the greatest path of mastery for all of those standards in those 3 credits, while preserving advanced placement and concurrent enrollment options for our students. Our last adoption, like Jackie said, was 2008, or 3 presidential administrations ago. Our standards have been revised 3 times since we've last adopted, the most recent being in 2022. Over the course of 7 meetings, we examined a lot of data. First, about what standards our students have the opportunity to master in which kinds of classes. We looked at standardized test scores nationally and locally. We studied pros and cons of different course pathways and different ways we could help students master those standards before looking at a deep study of our resources, grounded in scoring on our district rubric before making our recommendations to here for you tonight. So part of our work is about those graduation requirements. We are updating the course scope and sequence in our graduation requirements to read 1 year of world history with geography standards embedded, a year of US history, a semester of American government, and a semester of economics and personal financial literacy. The number of our credits has not changed. What has changed is that 9th grade course to be more focused on world history, and the change of economics from being an elective to being a required course for graduation, to give students, all of our students, the opportunity to master all of the standards in those 5 buckets. Our resource recommendation is also coming to you from the publisher, same publisher, Savvis. For world history, we're asking for the world history, the modern era, which goes from Reformation to present. US history, from Reconstruction to the present, and American Government Interactive. We'll also be recommending additional purchases of an economics resource that was adopted in 2021 to support the larger offerings of that course. Because we're embedding the geography standards into world history, previously we had a geography-based course, we really thought it worked best to integrate into world history when you look at the rigor of both sets of standards, but really that geography and high school standards are about things like migration, human populations, environmental impacts, resources, the impacts of conflicts, cultural diffusion in regions of the world. It's more than just making a map, and so they felt that those really worked well in a world history course. To support this work, there will be a curriculum team, but we're gonna lean on some resources that the district already has. Our library services ABC Clio databases, both in world geography and world history. We have a subscription to ArcGIS, and they have geography inquiries that align to a lot of our standards. And the Savvis Realize team is gonna give us some access to their world geography book, even though we're not purchasing it. Lessons that we identify specifically to meet our standards will be provided to teachers and students. I'll give you a moment to review either on the screen or on your packet our rationale statements. In summary, the biggest piece for us was the depth, the rigor, and the breadth of these resources as opportunities to teach all the standards to mastery. You can see here the next slide of the financial investment. So we're purchasing 3 different books from Savvis, the World History, the US History, and the Magruders. They're providing the teacher materials to us at no charge. Like Kristen, I am also including copies for special educators and culturally linguistic diverse teachers at the high schools who support our social studies instruction. Each of the books we're getting 8 800 print editions and the licenses, and then additional number of licenses to meet the number of students for 6 years. Shipping cost slightly less than Kristen's, even though my books are super, super heavy. And then the TCI additional purchase there, you can see we'd like to buy 500 additional print editions and 500 additional licenses to bring us to the total number of sections that we'll need to be offering in the coming years. Professional learning for this, again, the SAVIS program activation and implementation essentials, using their job embedded service days, and working to maybe provide 2 sub-days, one each semester for each school team for me to work with them on implementation, especially around that 9th grade course, which will have 2 sets of standards integrated. And the total investment is about $767,000.
What questions might you have for us around high school social studies, the process or the recommendation or the professional learning?
So with the new high school standards, genocide, is that encompassed in the world history? Okay.
And
And
then
then-
that course will be titled World Studies, the integrated course.
And then the other one was the Colorado government, right?
Yeah, so Colorado government is now in our civic standards. There's no resource that's going to provide anything. So we'll be leaning on the state. They have a database of primary sources and stuff to support the instruction of our state constitution. And then also I talked to a professor yesterday about geography, but she has a whole set of resources around what our state constitution specifies for different things as a way for students to access our state constitution.
Great. Any other questions?
Do you have a copy of this one that we can take a look at?
We have copies of it, yep.
So just out of curiosity, the selection of the teachers that were on this board or the members of the board, how exactly are they selected? Is it by a lottery? Is it just like, hey, I want to do this? How do you pick those people to ensure that you have like a variety of people throughout the district that are, representing?
We have a survey, and we have consistent processes that we follow per our charter from CRGC, the Curriculum Resource Governance Committee. So we invite teachers to apply. They fill out a form, and of course include your name and your school. We want to make sure that we have representation across schools, your years of experience, and your interest in joining the team. And at the high school level, especially, we want to make sure that those teachers teach different courses and have taught different courses over time. So we're looking for diversity on the team across schools, backgrounds, years of experience and interest, and also expertise and willingness to serve on the team. It's a commitment, and often, not only are they missing days from the classroom, but time after school, time on task. Yep.
So once you guys receive those applications and you ultimately select?
That's right, yep. And then norm as a team once in the first couple of days of convening, norming around what's our purpose, how will we behave, how are we going to think. Kristen and Amy did a lot of work with their teams about how should we operate as a team and how should we think through these processes and who are our stakeholders and what are we committed to. So that comes from their leadership, the norming that happens.
And I know that you were saying for the middle school or for the ELA curriculum, you had like 100% buy-in on that one. So what is the ratio? Is it a majority vote on this when it comes down to?
We use consensus voting for decision-making, and so that's a 5-point Likert scale, and we practice over time. And if all members of your team are a 3, 4, or 5, all 3, 4, and 5, then you have a decision by consensus. And sometimes everyone in the room is a 5, and sometimes most of the room is a 5 or a 4, and you have a few people who are a 3. They're still committed and can support the decision, though they may have had some other opinions throughout the process. And so consensus was met multiple times throughout their processes. We use consensus votes to eliminate. We use consensus votes to recommend.
And yesterday was really exciting because it was fives. It was complete agreement. So it wasn't just a matter of consensus where some might have moderate agreement. It was complete agreement, which yes.
My group was all 5s as well on the resource recommendation. And I will say, in terms of like the high school people who served on the committee, a lot of buildings went back and talked about who could serve us best and why before they applied, because they have many people get pulled out for a variety of things, and you don't want the same person representing you on the NIC and the other committees. So these were teachers that may not serve on those other things that the buildings really felt could represent them the best.
Before it moves to a consent vote, in the next board meeting, you'll have updated copies of the quotes from those vendors. And if you have other questions in between, we're happy to answer them and give you access to materials too.
Yeah, so for the newest board members, if you actually want to see the resource and like touch it, open it, feel it, then you can just get with Jackie and they'll go down to her office and you can pick up the resource and look at it.
Yep.
Is that
that's
right?
correct. Yep,
Okay.
that's right.
How many copies do you have?
You have plenty to, we've got enough. We'll figure it out.
Some of them I
Yeah.
only have one of.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be great.
And then are we supposed to vote on this business meeting, 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Right. So just so you kind of know the time frame because there's a time frame here to obviously get it ordered, get it here, and start getting it rolled out. So just so y'all know what our time frame is that we're looking at.
Yeah. And for context, these quotes are actually pretty similar. The shipping costs are more for English language arts because the consumables ship every year for 6 years. So it's the shipping over multiple
We
years.
go get them, like we rent a truck and go get them. I mean, honestly, it's like wages, somebody's.
And at high school,
It's
these are
insane.
3 courses, and at middle school, these are 3 grade levels. And it's the difference in our professional learning at middle school that makes these 2 quotes look different on paper. Yep.
Oh, and then, no, that's good. I answered my own question. All right.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I'll just say, I know the board feels this way too, the amount of work that y'all put in every time we go through the adoption of curriculum. I will say that talking to folks from other districts, not every district's putting as much time and effort into selection of resources as y'all are, and it really is a model. So I appreciate the time y'all put in, all the teachers that are giving of their time as well. And while there's no perfect process, but you'll have, I'd say perfect implementation of the process you have. So really appreciate all the time and effort y'all put into selecting the resource and having the open houses and everything. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I think, Dr. Hill, are you up for the elementary declining enrollment committee update and enrollment projections?
So there's a handful of slides, just warn you ahead of time. So if people end up getting up and walking out, I won't be offended. But I lost you too. Jeez. It's really gotten bad.
She's got to go get a drink.
Okay. Well, the first part of this is some review anyways. As we're wanting to give an update to the board, obviously, most recently we put out information around no decisions being made around elementary school closures for the next school year. And so that's already out there. But as we were putting this together, thought about it might be good to refresh folks' memory on why we've had to make some decisions in the past and kind of where we're at in terms of declining enrollment and why we're having to make some of these decisions. So the beginning is a bit of a review. So what I want to go over is just, again, restating the problem that we're dealing with, talk about some current enrollment numbers, talk about enrollment projections, which we have not presented at the board level for this year, and then talk a little bit about the follow-up after the East Middle School and the Fruit 8-9 closure decisions and the impacts that have had on staffing and budget. And then I'll talk a little bit about the EDEC pathways. Obviously, the closure consolidation one has been the biggest topic, and it also was the one that was identified as the most viable by the EDEC committee. Talk a little bit about next steps, and then answer any questions there might be. So if you remember back to when the EDEC was put in place, we came up with a problem statement. That was that current declining student enrollment negatively impacts D51 resources and infrastructure. The impact limits D51's ability to assemble the critical resources and infrastructure to adequately support and implement the strategic plan, and we desire to reallocate resources to create safe, successful classrooms for our students and staff. And I think everyone knows at this point, we've been dealing with declining enrollment for the last few years. I would say that was, for us as a district, it wasn't new information, but it was probably made more public last spring. January was when Shannon first came and gave that presentation to the board to really talk about what the future projections might look like for our district and the impact it's had on us. So we've experienced about a 10% student decline since 2019 for a myriad of reasons. I just want to refresh folks' memory around some of the presentations that we've received as a board and also that the EDEC committee received. So this was from the state demographer. If you remember back when she presented virtually to the EDEC, and then also we brought the slides forward to the board. But just some of the trends that they're looking at around jobs, labor force, population, aging, housing, that those are all connected, and then population growing at a slow rate, migration and mobility also slowing for our state. And then the concentrated growth is really in the metro areas, and then also the impacts that aging is having on different parts of the state as far as the aging population. And so she also shared with us sort of a big picture for growth in Colorado. 2010 to 2020 was the second slowest decade for U.S. in terms of growth, and then that 20 to 21 was the slowest year for U.S. Growth rate, with 17 states losing population, and then also between 21 and 22, 19 states. So it's not only our problem, it's a problem across the state and across the country as well. If you remember, she talked about the different components of the change when you look at natural increase versus in-migration. And so where we've seen loss of natural increase, but we've seen some in-migration, but also later on the slides talk about the age range of most of that in-migration and where that's coming from. So you can see in that little, and I apologize if it's small on the screen, you also have it in the folder if you need to pull it up on your Chromebook, but you can see the decade change and the amount of population change over time and how it's definitely slowed for our state in the last decade. And then this was just something that she showed about the under 18 population from 2010 2020, and you can see the change that we've seen in the Grand Junction area is actually having a decline in that age range. Okay. So population under 18 increased by 38,000 over the decade across the state, but only 5% of that total growth was from under 18. And then I know y'all are familiar with this one, but the two different decades, this is for Mesa County, where we saw a lot of our population net migration was from the 55 and up age range, which traditionally do not bring students into the school system. And then she also talked about Colorado as a whole forecasting out, and where she's projecting that will be through 2030. And you can see that population change, that there's a decline in that 0 to 17, and then you can see the different age ranges for our state. So while we may be growing in certain areas, it's not necessarily growing in students and families. And then this was our county, and you can see that we've also seen the decrease as well. You remember this slide, she talked about, and again, this is dependent upon a lot of different factors, but maybe, I think she said at that time, maybe by 2036, 2035, we would return to pre-pandemic number of students within our county. And remember, she looks at county-wide data, she doesn't look at district-specific data, and so so that she's basing this on a lot of different things, but maybe by 2035, we'll be back to pre-pandemic student population within our county. And obviously, a lot can change between now and then as well. Okay, and then this was just some of the forecasting factors that she uses. So again, population growth slowing, Births have slowed, migration mobility slowing, harder to attract and retain people. Fastest growth is in the 65 and up range. We heard this from the Mesa County folks that presented last month about we need to make sure that we're ready for new workers with the retirements that might happen, and then also jobs that can take care of folks as we have an aging population in our area as well. Okay. This was actually, I know it's a lot on the screen, but this was, I reached out to Elizabeth, she's the state demographer, and I reached out to her after she had presented and just said, hey, do you have any updated data? And she's gonna provide more in the future as well. But this was some of the information that she sent me back in an email. And she basically just said, we've evaluated the population by age data as a whole and created a net migration by age over the decade comparison, which is pretty interesting for Mesa County. It really changed over the decade, primarily driven by change in the economy. The dashed line in this last decade and the solid one is the prior decade. This last decade, Mesa had an out-migration of young adults. This was driven by the economy. This is always what leads to the slowdown in school enrollment and top of the declines in birth rates. I would keep it, and she just suggested keep an eye on the economy, chat with GGEP on a regular basis to see what they are seeing for job growth, and also keep an eye on housing development in the city. Both those indicators will give us a general idea of how things are going. And if there's a lot of job growth, then often you'll see more migration and potential for kids. So just things that we keep an eye on. But again, it's just reinforcing some of the data that she had before around the last decade, seeing slow growth for our younger folks. Y'all have seen this, but this is our birth rates for the county over time. And we're at one of the lowest rates that we've seen in a few decades. And so that trend has been continuing, and this is the most up-to-date data that we've had. This was from Mesa County Public Health that came last month, so again, just in case folks didn't see that presentation, I just pulled a few slides out. But again, birth rate has been decreasing for the last 15 years, and she talked about how can we adapt to better meet the needs of that changing population. She talked about different factors, greater access to birth control, and then that inward migration of older adults. And again, this is showing that breakdown of our county versus Colorado, and that in-migration of an older population into Mesa County versus the state as a whole. And so again, as I said before, they don't traditionally have students enrolling in the school district. And then again, you can see the population over time between net migration and a natural increase. We've seen obviously a lot more net migration, but again, that population has been an older group mainly. And then again, older adults are making up a greater and greater share of the population in our county. This was from CDE. I know the board's seen this, but this is some of the data that they just put out recently for statewide data. And essentially, they just said that it's the second straight year that student enrollment in Colorado public schools has declined, with the 23-24 school year, student enrollment reaching the state's lowest mark in a decade. So I mentioned before, it's not a Mesa County problem, it's a statewide problem. The last time Colorado public school enrollment was this low was 2013. And then for this last school year, the largest combined enrollment decrease occurred in pre-K through first grade. So again, those are the kiddos that are going to be moving through our system over time. Largest overall grade decreases in 2023 occurred in the first grade, which declined by 3.91%. And then kindergarten saw 1,068 fewer students than were in kindergarten the previous year, which is a 1.79% decrease. A total of 113 of the state's 178 school districts reported drops in enrollment. And then you can see the breakdown. And this is all linked in that letter that I sent out to staff and families. This was from CASB. So it's interesting that all these different entities that we partner with and work with have been sending out information because it is a concern statewide. And so this was some of their data around forecasting for K-12 enrollment and broken down by areas of the state. And so you can see we encompass part of that Western Colorado. Western's not just us, but we're a part of that. And you can see the decline that we're seeing compared to other parts of the state. And then obviously there are parts of the state that are actually growing. I know we were in the meeting last week with some folks from Greeley. They're actually seeing an increase in enrollment for different reasons. And so, again, job growth, affordability, those are all factors that play into why you might see an increase. So let's talk about current enrollment. So this year alone, we've declined at the elementary school level by 233 students, at the middle school level by 40 students, and at the high school level by 308 students. And I pointed out in the letter, but a decline of 233 students, especially with the size of schools we have here, that could be an entire elementary school population that you lose in 1 year. And then over time, since 2019, when we started seeing the decreases, we've lost over 1,800 students. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning, it's close to a 10% decrease in students. So for projections, again, we haven't shared this with the board publicly yet, but these are just for the out years for the next 2 years. You always want to be cautious of trying to project out too far into the future because a lot of things could change, right? Birth rate could start going up. We could have major companies move out here and bring employees with families. A lot of things could change. So we just showed for the next 2 years what the projections look like. But our demographer is projecting that we will decline by about 590 students this coming school year, with 349 of those students occurring at the elementary school level. And then again, we just know that this isn't sustainable over time, and we've got to make some changes. And so that's what those two projected with trending bars are. Again, trends could change, but that's what his projections would show over time. This is obviously really hard to see on the screen, but the main thing here is that all those cohorts have been decreasing over time. So our number of kindergartners coming in, our number of first graders, second graders, they've been smaller cohorts over the years. And so we're seeing that trickle through our school district and causing declines across the district over time. So I just want to revisit this. I know don't necessarily want to revisit it, but I think it's important to talk about why we had to make some decisions that we've made with both the middle school level and then the Fruita reconfiguration. So just a reminder about how we staff our buildings. So systemic staffing allocations are assigned to schools based on student counts. Schools are able to staff to school needs within a set parameter, and those allocations are in SSE, so systemic staffing equivalents, which consider number of hours worked and average cost of the position. So if a school declines in enrollment, they're going to decline in staffing. If they increase in enrollment, they would increase in staffing, and so that's how we staff our buildings. When you think about middle school, and this was pre-closure of East, when we were having a conversation around the need for doing a middle school closure, the initial pre-consolidation or pre-closure staffing for 2023-24 school year projected overages of about 22.8 positions at the middle school level. So to put that into context, at that time we had 8 middle schools. So across those 8 middle schools, and it obviously would impact each middle school differently, but we were going to be having to cut about 23 FTE from the middle schools. And that was just at that point. As enrollment continues to decline, we would have to continue to make cuts. And so you think about the number of positions in a middle school, right? That's almost like you're cutting a whole middle school over time as well. And so we knew that wasn't sustainable, and so we needed to make a change there. And again, one middle school might have had to lose 6, and another might have had to lose 1, but overall for the district, we were looking at potentially having to cut 23 FTE. The average classroom SSE, teachers and classified support per middle school last year was 26.5. 7 of the 8 middle schools were overstaffed based on projected student counts, ranging from 2% to 23% over. And reductions in utilizations of temporary funding in prior years meant that addressing this level of overage while maintaining all buildings would have meant reducing academic programming and student support. So this is why there was an impetus behind we've got to do something at the middle school level in particular, which led to the closure of East. Okay, and then that breakdown over on the right, this is all information from a prior presentation that was given to the board, but you could see where we were projecting we were going to have to make cuts for this school year across the different levels. Okay. So 14.96 of the middle school staffing overages were addressed through closure. Closure resulted in a total recurring annual savings of about $1.3 million. In addition to the East middle school savings for SSE were reduced at schools not directly impacted by the closure, so $300,000. In total, we recouped about 83% of the middle school unfunded positions for the 23-24 budget year, 1.6 of the 1.9 million in unfunded positions. The remainder, again, at that time, we were saying was going to be addressed through the Fruta returning to traditional grade configuration, which was a decision the board made back in December. And then ESSER dollars recovering that, those remaining unfunded positions. That's how we were subsidizing with grant funds. This is really blurry, but this was to try to give you an idea of the staffing impacts at the other middle schools because of closing one middle school. So because one middle school was taken offline, you can see in the first column, you had the student count as of 9/23, the change in student count from original projections, okay? Because those were before closure, school of choice, boundary changes, and all that. The original staffing that we were gonna have to do, so you could see like Booklift, we were gonna have to cut over 6 FTE from that building. Fruta, we were gonna have to cut over 3.5. Grand Mesa, 6.7. So those were the cuts that that's where the 22.8 comes in, those were the cuts we were gonna have to make at the middle school buildings. And then the adjustments that were made because of the closure, those buildings, instead of losing 6.17, Booklift gained 5 FTE because they took on students from the closed school. Same thing with Orchard Mesa. They were gonna lose FTE. They gained FTE because they gained student enrollment also through moving the challenge program over there. And then the same thing with Grand Mesa. Less of a decline or less of a cut that they had to make at that school because of increase in students that were added there. And then you can see West, obviously, we were gonna have to cut 0.7 and we ended up adding 6. So just trying to, again, this is old data, but I wanted to reiterate the reasons why making a decision around a closure, the financial and staffing impacts it has for the district. While it's not something that we enjoy having to do, it has a direct impact to the other buildings across the district as well. Okay.
Can I ask a question on, when you're looking at the Fruta adjustment that they lost 4, is that just the middle school, or is that middle school and 8-9?
That is, I believe that's just the middle school. And remember, this was before we made the decision to do the reconfiguration in Fruta. So I don't believe all those adjustments ended up being made. We subsidized some of that through ESSER funding. So it should have been reduced by 4. I don't know that we reduced completely by 4 this year.
By that consolidation or by that reformation,
yeah,
it really is going to probably help
Yes.
with those numbers as
And
well.
I do have that on another slide in here, but yeah, so this was when we were just talking about a middle school closure, when we closed East, and then Fruta 8-9 closure obviously impacted it as well. And that's where this comes in. So again, I'm not gonna go through all this, but y'all know that Fruta also was declining in students, and that we were overstaffed currently by 9 in the Fruta secondary schools, and that was gonna grow going into next school year as well. Subsidizing 9 FTE at the average teacher salary equates to about $800,000. And so we've been using ESSER funds to subsidize that, but that's obviously not sustainable. And so this board looked at, based on the projections and what could happen next year in those schools, that number was gonna grow and the number of FTE we were gonna have to pull from the buildings, or the subsidy would have been over about $1.2 million. And then again, it wouldn't have actually solved any problem if we just subsidized. It would have just been putting it off down the road. And so the closure of the 8-9 building is going to also have a positive impact on being able to staff buildings better and not having to subsidize as much staffing, and especially with the grant dollars running out. This was that really busy one that I showed y'all before, but to try to show that breakdown of that this has been happening over time in the Fruta area. It wasn't like this just last year, all of a sudden we had to reduce FTE. There was a reduction in 2021 by 5.5 FTE, then again in 2022 by 3.2, 2023 by 10.5. And so that's a total of close to 20 FTE in the Fruta secondary schools since that time. And so, again, we subsidized in 2023 that 9.34 FTE overage, which came out to over $800,000. And then with the projections we were showing for next year, that would have grown to 13.6 FTE, which would have been over $1.2 million on average teacher cost or FTE cost. And so that's why we brought it to the board to say we needed to make some decisions around Fruita 8-9 as well. And so I want to be clear, we showed this before, we were clear about it before as well, that these were projections based off of pre-SOC, some other factors that go into play as well. So these aren't definites. So I don't want it to sound that Fruita Middle School is definitely going to get additional 10 FTE, but this was based off those projections prior to, and we're still finalizing that school of choice process and adjusting staffing for the buildings based off of that. And so that process is going on right now. And remember our timeline was to have staff positions posted by February 15th, and so we're still on track to be able to do that, and we'll have a better idea of what those FTE will look like. But mainly, the point of this was to show that instead of having to cut, on that last slide, 13.6 FTE from those 3 schools, we are actually going, by reducing one secondary school out there, we're actually going to be adding FTE to the remaining 2 buildings because they'll be taking on additional students, moving 8th grade to the middle school and 9th grade to the high school, which will help those buildings not have to cut FTE over time. Okay. So this is new, and it's also based off of some of the data that we've gotten back from the folks that are going through the long-range facility planning process right now. So I will tell you that this isn't finalized. This is me taking their data and trying to run the numbers, and so there could be some shifts from this as well, but it gives you kind of an idea of, I was curious to look to see how many available seats we have within our buildings, and this is only looking at permanent capacity. So permanent capacity does not include modulars. So many of our buildings have modulars, and so that would actually add to these numbers if you included modulars, but I know as a district, it would be great to get to a point where we don't have to have modulars at our buildings for a variety of reasons. So I just looked at permanent capacity, but just know that there are additional seats as well if you included modulars. So currently we are utilizing about 73% of our permanent seats at the elementary level. We're utilizing 71% if you include temporary seating. Schools range anywhere from 53% utilization to 99% utilization at the elementary level. And then talking to our the long-range facility planning folks, kind of the industry standards around having 85% of your utilization of your buildings, so you're getting the best use of them. And so we're obviously not there as a district at the elementary level, and it ranges from school to school. At the middle school level, prior to the east closure, we were utilizing about 65% of our permanent seats at the middle school. That percentage increased to 72% after the closure at East, because essentially you're taking those seats offline. And that percentage will increase to 74% after the closure of 8-9 and the move of Fruita Middle School. So again, it's still not up to the 85%, kind of 80 to 85% what you're looking for, but it at least got us further away from 65% utilization across the district for our middle schools. And at the high school level, prior to the 8-9 closure, we're utilizing about 88% of our permanent seats. That percentage will increase to about 95% after the closure of 8-9 and the movement of the 9th grade to Fruita Monument High School. Again, there are modulars at some of our high schools, so that number would change as well. So as a district, after the closure of East Middle School and Fruita 8-9, we'll be utilizing about 78% of our permanent seats as a district, but with projections of enrollment continuing to decline, that number is just going to get worse. So and over here on the right, it shows you actual number of seats. And so when you start talking about how do we best utilize our buildings, if we're going to invest in buildings, you heard the presentation earlier, where we're going to prioritize bond dollars in the future to put them towards aging facilities. Those are the kind of decisions we're going to have to make. And if we have this many available seats, is it smart to invest in all of our buildings, knowing that we're maybe not going to need to utilize those buildings on the road? So that's all going to be a factor in this as well. So I just thought it was good information for the board to see. And again, I'll have updated numbers once we're done with the long-range facility planning process. That's a lot of available seats right now across the district.
It is a lot, and I just want to reiterate the part that you said about that's where we are now. But we know that our enrollment is going to continue to decline over the next at least 5 years. So that number, that utilization number is going to get worse. I mean, in the case of Fruita 8-9 and the middle school coming together at 95%, that's great, but that's going to decrease.
yeah, the projection would show that happening over time. And again, I just think it all plays into the conversations we're going to be having moving into the future around where we want to utilize capital dollars and investing in our buildings. So, because yeah, if you have growth down the road, right, you want to make sure that you have buildings that can meet that need. So you don't want to eliminate to the point where you can't adjust for that growth, but also that's going to take time, and those buildings are going to continue to age over time. And so we just need to be really strategic about where we invest capital funds.
Yeah, I mean, at 95%, that might even be a little bit high,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, it doesn't give us a lot of wiggle room for any kind of growth.
And I should say too that again, that doesn't include the modulars. And so once you throw in modulars, that percentage declines a little bit for high school. Yeah. So talk real quick about the EDEC pathways. I know you know all these, but these were the different pathways that the Declining Enrollment Committee came up with through that process. And so there was 5 pathways that were identified. The first one being school closures, consolidations. That was the most supported pathway, with over 80% of the voting members ranking it as the most viable option. And so that's obviously one that we're still exploring. Pathway 2 was looking at a mill levy override. And so the committee heavily supported the district exploring potential for additional mill levy overrides to help address funding shortages. Pathway 3 was talking about promoting and increasing the robust and aligned options that we have as a district. So could we use that to potentially attract families from other options, or as a selling point for families that maybe are looking to move to the area? And so that was Pathway 3. Pathway 4 was looking at subsidizing and providing flexible support through possible increases in state per pupil funding. And then Pathway 5 was an ongoing evaluation of central office staffing and programs. So looking at the first pathway around school closures and consolidations, again, all this was shared in the letter that went out, but obviously this is a sensitive topic, one that we don't take lightly. We want to make sure that any decision around school closure consolidations at the elementary level utilizes the most up-to-date data, is timely, and considers all impacts. So again, the message that was put out, I'm not bringing a recommendation to the board for this year for any elementary school closures for the following school year. And then these 4 buckets underneath are really trying to highlight why that decision was made. So up-to-date data, again, we're in the middle of that 25-year facility master plan. You heard the presentation tonight. We're already getting a lot of good data from that. And so we want to make sure that that process plays out and that we have the most up-to-date data on facility condition scores and educational adequacy, and then also those building utilization numbers, because that plays into the closure criteria that is up in the top right of the screen, parts of that criteria. This data will also help inform decisions on which schools meet the criteria for closure consolidation that were developed by the EDEC, and then we anticipate the data will be finalized in March. So that's one of the reasons why it did not make sense to bring forward a recommendation right now. Also timely, we've learned from prior experience that the decision needs to be made in the fall semester of the school year, prior to the school year of the closure or consolidation. I don't think anybody wants to go through making the decision in the spring like we had to do with East. And so we learned from that. And so since we're already into February, it doesn't make sense to bring a recommendation forward right now. And then community impact, obviously, we want to have time once we've identified some schools that would be candidates to be able to go out and meet with the communities and talk to them about the why behind it, have a conversation about what that impact would look like, but also to have ideally more of a robust conversation about the future of the communities that will be impacted and how we can essentially bring communities together through this process. So if the closures have to happen or consolidations, how can we ensure that it's more of a collaborative process with the communities that are being impacted than feeling like it's communities maybe pitting themselves against each other, which we don't want, obviously. And so this provides us a little bit more of a runway to do that. And then the last one was around policy. When the board voted on the recommendations from the EDEC, there was a commitment to creating a closure consolidation policy, and so we're using the spring semester to create that before we'd make any decision in the fall for a closure or consolidation. So what does that mean for staffing? So because we're not closing any elementary schools for next school year, how does that impact staffing for next year, right? So we're projected to decline again by about 590 students next year as a district, 349 of that decline projected at the elementary level. And those are projections. So a loss in enrollment obviously means loss in per pupil funding from the state for those students, which means a reduction in staffing. Our staffing projections for next year show that we would need to cut over 28 FTE from the elementary schools. So you think back to when we were talking about our middle schools, right? It was 22.8, I think was the number, and we felt like that was a huge impact. Only 8 middle schools at that time, but still an impact. Elementary has now grown to 28.3. We have more elementary schools, so obviously it's spread a little bit more, but it impacts, again, elementary schools differently. There might be one elementary school that would need to reduce by 3 FTE and another one that wouldn't. So, but as a whole, the projections were showing pre-SOC that we'd have to make a reduction of over 28 FTE at the elementary level, which is not ideal. And then we're still having impacts at the middle and high school level, but remember some of these numbers include before we had made the recommendation for the 8-9 closure and the reconfiguration out there. So that will help take care of some of those overages, but we have still seen a decline in student enrollment, so we still have to make adjustments at the secondary level. So if we were to just to kind of give you a ballpark of the amount of FTE projected for next year that we would have to reduce if we weren't making some of these decisions around Fruit 8-9 and then also doing some subsidies for the elementary, that's over $5 million in projected staffing overages for next school year, okay? We felt like it wouldn't be fair to the elementary schools because we're not able to make a decision yet to pull those FTE out of those buildings because it would impact programming at the elementary level. And so not making those cuts would require a 1-year subsidy of staff. So our finance department, who's great, worked on identifying some ESSER funds, some one-time grant dollars that were earmarked for other things that we never spent them on. So it may have been a position that never got filled or whatever it might have been. And so we identified some funds that we could use one time that, again, are going to expire this coming school year to be able to help subsidize some of that overage until we can make the decisions around elementary school closures. And so again, just a reminder, those ESSER funds run out in September of '24. So again, that projected overage, 5.1 million. The projected Fruita reconfiguration savings is about 1.6, and so that net subsidy is around 3.5 million. I'm not doing this justice. If Mel was here, she'd do a lot better job. So what does that mean for staffing for elementaries? We've already presented to the principals about this. We've already put this out to the community, but site directors are working with each elementary school principal to plan for staffing for next school year. If there is an opportunity to make a reduction in staff without negatively impacting the operations of the building, so for example, if you've got a school that's projected to have really small class sizes at a grade level, and you could combine those class sizes and still keep them at a reasonable level, then it would probably make sense to go ahead and make that reduction of FTE there, because if not, it's just going to compound for the following year. And so those are the conversations that site directors are having with principals, and will continue to have with them around, okay, your projections show you should be reduced by this much. We obviously have some one-time funds to help subsidize that, but is there any area that you could make a reduction that wouldn't negatively impact programming in your building, so that it's not such a cliff the following year? Potentially, okay? So those are conversations they're having right now, but again, knowing that we have those ESSER funds to subsidize staffing where reductions would potentially negatively impact the schools. And then I mentioned in the letter as well that we're engaging with some partners to help us develop that preliminary decision model that will help us better understand how to apply those 6 criteria and having that outside support to be able to have a fresh set of eyes to say, objectively, this is where you can make some of those school closures or consolidations as a district, and it will positively impact you around staffing and funding and resources for your buildings. And then I just want to go back to this. This was from the EDEC committee, and none of us want to make closures or consolidation decisions, but we know that at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we have equipped and empowered elementary schools. And this was some of the stuff that we talked about in the committee. We want to make sure that we have schools that have strong teams, that have, ideally 3 to 4 teachers per grade level. It allows for professional learning communities more staffing to spread out for duties, more specials and enrichments, those student supports, being able to have robust supports within the building, and then also, again, talking about quality facilities, making sure that we invest in quality facilities moving forward. So that's the goal. It's going to take time, and not one pathway is not going to solve all of our problems, but that's the goal that we can get to eventually, is to have these equipped and empowered schools across our district. So the other 4 pathways, just to highlight or hit on them real quick. So pathway 2, again, that was the mill levy overrides. So we are working internally to explore the possibility of additional MLOs to make up for the lack of state funding. I'll pause for a second. I appreciate, I know we heard from the governor today, he was in town. I know that at the state level, they're touting that they're looking to buy down the BS factor and to finally get to fully funding K-12 education in the state, which still has to happen. It hasn't happened yet. Just a reminder, they've withheld over $250 million from our district alone since 2009. So I just want to be clear, when the state says that they're going to fully fund K-12 education potentially after this year, we're not getting the money that was withheld over time back. So we're not going to get a check for $250 million next year. That money's gone. And our operating budget is a little over $200 million. So that's over a year's worth of operating budget for a district that's been withheld over time. So we're not getting that back. And then also the funding levels were set, the last time they were adjusted was 1989. So this would be getting us back to 1989 levels, adjusted for inflation, obviously, but the state hasn't really invested in looking at what does it actually take to educate students in 2024. There is a task force that was put together that has put out some recommendations as of last week, and I mentioned that in here, that those recommendations would require an additional, I think, close to $500 million just for next year. Which, what are the odds of that happening? Probably pretty slim. So it's more of a reminder to say, I think it's positive that the state's looking at these things, but we need to be realistic with the fact that it's not actually going to fully fund K-12 education to a 2024 level based on needs. And so we end up having to rely on those mill levy overrides to subsidize what the state's not funding for K-12. And so we have a 2017 mill that's going to sunset in 2027. We need to decide when to make the ask of the community, and if that ask will remain the same, or if we're going to need to ask for more. So just to highlight, the 2017 mill levy override, which provides about $6.5 million annually for us, and it doesn't adjust for inflation, that doesn't cover the needs that were identified back then anymore. So the costs for the needs that were identified back in 2017, when we said 5 additional school days or instructional days, curriculum adoption, instructional technology needs, capital construction, like $6.5 million we identified at that time was what we would need. It's grown now to $7.4 million. So even the dollars we're getting from that mill levy override aren't covering what we said it was going to pay for back in 2017. So those costs have already gone up. So it's just something to be mindful of when we do go out and ask for either, if we say to the community, hey, just keep this mill levy override going and don't put a sunset on it, we just need to be realistic that it's not even covering what we said it was going to cover back in 2017. And so those are just discussions we're going to have. But we are working on that internally to talk about timing of when we'd want to go for that and what would be the ask. Pathway 3 was around the robust and aligned options. So in March, you're going to get a presentation from that action team within the strategic plan that has been exploring that, and they're going to present on the current D51 options and next steps specific to the strategic plan goals with an emphasis on K-12 alignment. So they've got some data they're going to bring to you all in March. By the end of the year, we want to do a survey of families about interests in current and new options, including questions about why families might choose other options. So we talked about wanting to do that. So this team is working on that. And then going into next year, being able to have an introduction of processes to support current schools with unique programs and to support schools in adding unique programming. So if we identify from these surveys that families are looking for I don't even want to throw out a topic, but if they're looking for some sort of program that we don't really offer, then we can start talking about a process to work with schools that maybe want to adopt that. You think about Mount Garfield, right? They just or a year or two ago, they asked for funding to become an MYP. So now they've got a middle years program that they've started this school year, and they're accepting applications for. That's a unique program. It's going to have potentially funding tied to it, but it offers another option for our families, and so we want to explore, do we need other options like that to attract families to the community? So that's Pathway 3. We're still working on that as well. Pathway 4 was around any new funding we might get from the state. So again, we won't know what new funding we might receive from the state until closer to the end of the school year. That's just the way the funding works in our state. And so we don't really have a clear picture of what that might look like. Over the last few years, we have prioritized any new ongoing funding towards increasing staff salaries to try and be more competitive. We've increased starting teacher salary by about $10,000 over the last few years, but we're still lagging behind other comparable districts in the state. So if we want to keep prioritizing that, we've got to be strategic about, if we get new funding, are we going to use that to subsidize things, or are we going to use it to continue to put it towards our people, which I think would be an important investment. I know the board does as well. I mentioned a while ago that there was a school finance task force report released last week that proposes additional funding for K-12, but there's a long road left in that process. And so, some of the numbers they ran, our district would see an increase in funding, but again, they would have to completely shift how they're funding K-12 education in the state, because there would be districts that would be losers and there'd be districts that would be winners. And some of the districts that would be losing funding are on the Front Range, and they have an ear. And so I'm just not as optimistic about that happening anytime soon, but it would be great if that happens over time, if they actually do make adjustments to the formulas to better fund school districts with the needs like we have in our school district. But we'll keep an eye on that as well. And then I mentioned before, we've been engaging with those folks, the content experts who will help assist us in developing a multi-year master financial model to integrate all the different major revenue and expense considerations, growth factors, sensitivity analysis for key components such as enrollment, state funding, and mill levy success. So that'll help us plan for the out years as well, which is something we don't have right now. We don't have a multi-year plan like that. And so they're going to be working with Mel and her team to create that and have something that we can use ongoing. And again, that's grant funded. So we're using grant funds to pay for that. And then Pathway 5, again, we've been engaging with the same folks in the field around assisting us in an immediate review of all significant ongoing academic programs and investments. So this is the program evaluation, and to understand efficacy, identify investments for reprioritization. They're going to identify academic investments which can be immediately deprioritized if applicable. Academic investments will be ranked and prioritized based on both efficiency and efficacy, so looking at return on investment, and then provide objective perspective on major academic investments, and then make recommendations for potential reinvestment of academic spend on more effective programming. So, and their scope's going to be outside of just the academic side of the house as well, but just looking at centralized spending and funding, and where could we potentially make some changes there to find some efficiencies. So that's what's happening with Pathway 5 as well, and so we'll have more information on that as well. Okay, so real quick, next steps, I promise I'm almost done. So January, we already notified the board about the elementary decision or no decision for right now. We notified the principals, we had a meeting with the principals to present that to them, and then we sent out the letter to the staff. I know it says today, but that was from when we had that meeting, and then a letter to the families. Side directors, again, are working with the schools on staffing for next year. Just to be clear, middle and high school, we're still making the adjustments there because we're not closing any middle schools or high schools, and we're not looking to do that in the future. So we're still going to have to make the adjustments there. But for the elementary level, we're going to work on where we need to make the cuts and where we need to subsidize using those one-time grant funds. We're doing the presentation with the board now. We'll continue to have presentations moving forward. March through the fall, we're going to finalize that facility master plan. We'll continue working on these different pathways that I mentioned and bring information forward. We need to create that closure policy as a board, and that's going to be important because it's something that we'll need to use when we make those decisions moving forward. And then, again, communicating with those potentially impacted communities as we move forward. And then the fall, finalize closure and consolidation process, recommend the schools to the board, and then have a board vote, ideally in the fall, that would take effect for the following school year. It's not ideal. I know that the longer that these decisions are dragged out, it's more on our community as a whole. It's a lot on this board. It's a lot on our administration, and so we don't want to keep doing that. But felt like there were real valid reasons for why we needed to delay that decision until the following school year at this point. So with that, I'm going to stop talking, and if there are any questions folks might have on this topic.
So, and this might be a question for Nikki, and she might not be able to answer it yet. Are we confident if, we have the recommendations later this year for consolidations, are we still looking at displacement for staff, or would we be looking at any kind of reduction in force? Are we anticipating we'd still have enough positions open for displacement? And that we're not reducing, we're not laying off any staff.
So
That's been my concern from
Yeah.
the beginning, is the longer we wait, I'm concerned that, that there'd be people we'd have to lay off. And again, I know we're probably making a prediction and we don't know for sure, but I'm just asking what our confidence level is on that.
And I assume you're talking about for elementary because
Yeah.
specifically,
Just for
yeah.
elementary.
So obviously we'll have more data in the fall because it'll be dependent upon how much of a decline we continue to see in student enrollment, and so how that's going to impact staffing. It also will depend on how many schools maybe get recommended for closure or consolidation. And then also our financial situation moving forward as well. So, I can't confidently say what direction that would go. Obviously, we would prefer to not have to go that route, and we prefer to do what we're doing right now, which with our middle and our middle school and the Fruit 8-9 situation, which was being able to guarantee positions for folks and find positions for folks. But I don't know. I'm looking at Nikki to make sure I'm not butchering anything she would have said. Is that? I don't know about perfect, but it was adequate. Yeah, so that is not something we want to explore, and I think the longer we put things off, the more the reality would become that we might have to do something like that. So that's why we don't want to delay this any further than having to make a decision next fall. And then obviously there's other strategies that we've employed or employed in the past that we could use to try to help with creating positions throughout the district. That's one of the reasons why when we've been exploring like the early retirement initiative or incentive, excuse me, if you were going to offer that district-wide now, is that really the most strategic option to do now? Because you might need to utilize that next year if you're looking at additional school closures. And so those are conversations we've had internally as well, all within the scope of trying to figure out ways to not have to move towards what you're talking about.
So I think the follow-up question I would have, and I'll speak for myself, but maybe other board members would agree, is that I would like a recommendation on all the consolidations for us to take place. So we're not, again, extending this over years, closing one elementary school next year and then having to do one more the following year. So I know that's a balancing act for you all to decide if what's too little or what's too much. But I think we just need to be able to make a decision and be able to move forward. And so with that too, are we, at this point, we've done East, and then we, 1 year, and then we've done the Fruit 8-9 this year. Is that going to be too taxing on staff if we have more than one school consolidating in in the 25 school year timeframe?
So it's definitely been taxing, and it's been a learning experience for staff. So, I think East, what made it even more difficult was the timing on it, obviously. And, I take blame for that. So it's, we don't want to do that again. It just was a lot at one time. The 8-9, obviously we did that earlier than we did with East, but that's obviously going to be a lot with a move, and you're throwing in the Grand Junction High School move as well. So we're really taking on two, well, it's two moves, but it's impacting multiple schools. So you've got Junction moving into the new Junction, you've got the 8-9 building the program that will be closing, and then you're moving a middle school into that building, and then you're also moving kids into the high school out in Fruta and making adjustments there. So that is a lot at one time. So I think, obviously, as this conversation continues, we'll be talking about a number of schools at the elementary level, but ideally it would be what we could handle, and it would be something that would be a recommendation we can make that would get us through an extended period of time. I would not look forward to saying we're going to do one now and then we're going to come back next year. I don't think that's fair to this community and to the board. And so, but we've got to find, for lack of a better term, that sweet spot, and that's why we're working with the folks that we're working with to figure out what's the amount we would need to do to help us get through this next phase. But we also don't want to make such a cut that we can't adjust down the road if we end up seeing an increase in student enrollment.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Thanks for the recap on that and just kind of the process that we've all had to go through, kind of thinking through all of that. So, all right, we have our school calendars that we're ready to approve.
So I think the main thing with that, because Jen's not here, she's at a work thing, but you have them in your packet. It's the additional calendars for like our charter or in-district charter schools. They have their own calendar, so it's just for you to review. And I don't believe you're making a decision on those tonight, so I think it's coming back at the business meeting. So it's kind of like the policies that we're going to look at next. It's just there for you to review. We have to do this every school year. We adopt our district-wide calendar, which the board already did, but then the charter schools and DIA and New Emerson, they all make their own calendars because some of them are on 4-day weeks and things of that nature. So it's there for you to review. And then if y'all have any questions between now and the business meeting, reach out to Jen and her team and she can answer those.
Thank you. All right, and then this evening we have the policies first readings, GBEE for staff use of information and technology resources, JEA compulsory attendance ages, JH student absences and excuses, and then JKD and JKE student suspension and expulsion. So those are all in our packets. So take a look at those. And if you have questions, talk with Tammy between now and the business meeting for any questions on the policies. So, any other? Okay. We are now going to move into our business meeting. So, I don't have a copy of the resolution. Sorry, I only had.
You can bring it up.
Oh. I like paper. Reading
No,
paper.
no.
Thank you, Amy.
Oh, she's got it.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so this evening, we have one item to vote on. So I'm going to read the resolution, and then the board can make a motion for the resolution, and we can go from there. So this is an amendment to the superintendent employment contract. So the Board of Education recognizes the exceptional service and dedication of Dr. Brian Hill in leading our district towards its educational goals, and it is in the best interest of the district to maintain stability and continuity in leadership. And it is in the best interest of the district to amend Dr. Brian Hill's employment contract, and the amendment shall include adjustments aimed at enriching district leadership and promoting the continued achievement of the district's vision and goals. So now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Education of Mesa County Valley School District 51 hereby approves the amendment of the employment contract of Dr. Brian Hill under the terms of employment contract attached hereto, and authorizes and directs the board president and secretary to execute said employment contract on behalf of the board upon execution of same by Dr. Hill. So that is the resolution that we're voting on this evening. So do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we can take the vote.
Mr. Chavez,
Yes.
Mrs. Evanson,
Yes.
Mrs. Heights,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Lima.
Yes.
Oh, you were waiting.
Just seeing if he was still awake.
Dr. Hill, did you have anything you wanted to say, or are you good? No, go ahead, because we voted, so then.
Well, obviously, I'm excited, and I want to thank the board. Excited to be able to continue serving the community. And so I wrote down words because I'll mess it up if I don't, so bear with me. I just thought I'd make the meeting even longer. I do want to start from a place of gratitude and say thank you to the Board of Education for entrusting me with the opportunity to continue serving our community in D51 in Mesa County. I feel very honored to be a part of this team of 6, serving our D51 community. I also want to thank prior board members in D51 that I've had the opportunity to work with. 2 years ago, the board approved my current contract, and I've had the honor of serving as the superintendent for the last 1.5 years. Prior to that, I had the opportunity to serve our community as the assistant superintendent for 3 years. Despite the challenges we have faced as a district over the past 4.5 years, I'm proud of the work we have done and the accomplishments we have seen, and I'm committed to serving our district as we continue to work through these challenges for a better D51. Some of the work that we've done together to highlight, we were the largest district in Colorado to return to in-person learning and stay open during the pandemic despite opposition. Through a collaborative effort, we successfully passed 2021 bond to allow construction of a much-needed new Grand Junction High School. We created a new community-driven three-year strategic plan, something the district hadn't had in place since 2017. For the first time in D51, we are creating a comprehensive facility master plan that will provide a blueprint for how we best address building needs over the next 25 years. Over 80% of our schools are performing at the highest 2 academic levels in the state, surpassing our year 1 goal in our strategic plan. 80% of our K through 3 students are reading at or above grade level, which is an all-time high for the district. We've added and improved pathways for students to obtain college credits. In this past year, D51 students obtained a total of 9,479 college credits, which is an all-time high. Our graduation rate is at the highest level we've seen in 17 years. Our students surpassed our pre-pandemic academic performance scores on CMAS. We've increased our teacher starting salary by $10,000 since 2019, with average teacher and counselor salaries increasing this year alone by 11.5%. And we moved to a steps and lanes salary schedule, which rewards teachers for continuing their education. We negotiated and made necessary changes to our insurance benefit package that allowed staff to increase their pay by decreasing their out-of-pocket costs each month. D51 reserves are more in line with comparable districts in the state's benchmark for a reserve balance percentage, and our insurance reserves are back to a healthy pre-pandemic level. We improved our accountability with the district by making necessary staffing changes throughout the district. We generated hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings by combining and not backfilling positions throughout D51, including central office staff, utilizing in-house legal counsel rather than outsourcing services, accessing our own buildings, thereby eliminating leases, and modernizing our facility rental process. We increased communication with families and community through multiple mediums, and we've increased our transparency with the Board of Education by implementing a better open line of communication and accessibility so board members stay informed and involved in important decisions. This is just a snapshot of some of the work we have accomplished as a district together over the past few years, and the work hasn't happened alone. I want to be clear about that. I'm very grateful to all of the over 3,000 employees, teachers, principals, other school-based staff, central office staff in D51 who work tirelessly to serve our over 20,000 students. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for the support y'all have shown me over the years. I'm grateful to my senior leadership team who have given of themselves 7 days a week and a crazy work schedule, and they work crazy hours to support our 40-plus schools. So thank you to our senior leadership team. I'm committed to continuing the work that needs to be done in our district because I know I have the support of this great team. I'm grateful to our D51 families and community partners for all that they do to support the work that we do. We have a great community, and I'm proud to be a part of it and to be raising our kid in the community. Why is it when I mention family, I get all emo? I should have just cut this part out. Speaking of my family, I shouldn't have cut this part out, sorry. I'm grateful to my lovely wife, Kaylin, and our amazing son, Everett, for all that they do to support me in this job. and for being there for me when I'm stressed and feeling overwhelmed. Our son started his kindergarten year the fall we moved here, and has continued to grow as a student thanks to the amazing teachers and staff that have worked with him. And so that's really important to us as well. We're committed to our community, and I look forward to continuing to serve our community in the capacity of superintendent of schools as we continue to progress towards the day when D51 is the top school district in the state of Colorado. I'm going to end tonight by sharing something that I shared 2 years ago when the board approved my first superintendent contract, and that's my core values as a leader. They are first and foremost, all means all, meaning that every kid has access to opportunities in our district. I strive to put kids first in every decision that I make as a leader. I try to practice empathetic servant leadership every day in my job. I try to leverage my position of influence to remove barriers to student and staff success. I believe that every perspective brings value, and I believe in collaboration over confrontation. I share those now, like I shared them then, to point out that they haven't changed. These are values that have helped to guide my actions and inform how I show up as a leader for our student, staff, and community that we serve, and they will continue to inform and guide my actions in the years to come. So with that, thank you again to the board and to our community for entrusting me with the honor and duty of leading this district into the future. I ended with this quote at White Ice last weekend, and I'll end with it here because it's one of my favorites. The quote is that if you're going to be in the business of making something, be in the business of making something great. We're making something great in D51, and it's because of our teachers, our staff, our admin, our families, this board, and community partners. And I'm proud to get to serve alongside all of y'all and continue to make D51 a great place for students. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those words, and we're excited about, I think, stability and just the path that we're moving towards. And I know you haven't always had an easy board to work with either, but you've been very gracious, and I think you've brought last board and this board together, and I think it's been very beneficial. So thank you for your leadership. So, all right, we have open board discussion?
For me, I just want to, I know she's not here, but Angela Christensen and the D51 Foundation put a wonderful White Eye celebration on, and it was good. And congratulations to all of our award winners, and it was good to see so many schools, different schools win so many different awards. So lets us know we're doing some things right and we're headed in the right direction. So.
We also attended the pancake breakfast at
New Emerson.
Yeah.
On Saturday. Dr. Hill was there. We missed you in Everett, but the entire board
Yeah, we all made it.
made it to that, and the pancakes were exceptional, and the company with some of the parents and the kids from New Emerson was really the most fun, so that was a fun thing to get to do. We also have a board coffee coming up, so
Yes, this Saturday, right?
this Saturday do we know where it is? At Rimrock.
Go ahead.
So something I wanted to kind of bring to the community's attention is that a lot of people, when you go through your kids' drawers and you get rid of clothes and things like that, you'll run them down to the Goodwill or wherever, Salvation Army, whatever is available. Well, there's a need in our schools for any used clothing that's, lightly used. You can call a school that's close to your home and see if they have a need for that size. We do have a community closet at Grand Junction High School that's ran by Jody Kronk, who is a teacher at Grand Junction High School. She's fabulous. We've had needs within the community that have been met through that community closet. She calls it the boutique. It's awesome. I've called her from a middle school and said, hey, I need this. I have a kid over here that needs this. She's like, come over and take whatever you want. So she's super, accommodating. So you can call whatever school you need. They'll tell you who you can drop it off with or where you can drop it off at. And then it goes back into our community. Another thing that we have within our schools, I'm not sure if some of you guys are aware of, but like Tope Elementary, we currently have the Watchdog Dads program. And the Watchdog Dads program has been facilitated through a fabulous parent here named Kirby Richardson. And the purpose of the Watchdog Dads program is kind of twofold. It puts strong male support leaders in our schools, dads that are there for their children, and it helps them to be role models for other kids within our schools. And it doesn't have to be just dads, it can be grandpas, it can be uncles, it can be brothers, it can be anything. And they go through a background process and a vetting, if you will, before they're allowed to walk into our schools. Another reason for that is that it puts another set of eyes in our schools that's not necessarily there, teaching and, paying attention to 27 kids in a classroom. They're there walking the halls, or they're in the lunchroom, or they're outside during recess. So it helps to enhance our safety and security. And we're trying to get this in some of our middle schools to help with some incidents that are happening throughout the district, gives that extra safety and security. So if you hear it coming about at one of your kids' middle schools or high schools or even elementary school, please step up. We would love to see the parents in our community become involved in their kids' schools and put in that volunteer time. And honestly, I think that the Watchdog Dads program is only I think it's 1 day a year for each parent, but we have to have an organizer at each school. So that's something that we're trying to work on and getting throughout multiple schools in the district. So please step up, come out, help out. We'd appreciate it.
And we're especially looking for folks that might want to help at Bookcliff Middle School.
And Grand Mesa Middle School, I think.
I know Bookcliff has but they're struggling with getting the facilitator and the people to actually just get it going.
Yeah, and you can actually look them up online, right? And you can see the kind of the work that they've done in other communities, and it decreases bullying, fighting, just behavior issues. And again, it's just a great way for you to be a positive role model in our schools. And like Barb said, it doesn't take a lot of time. So thank you for that reminder. That's great. And I think, is there a boutique at Bookcliff Middle School too? I think when we toured there last year, they were starting one, or they at least had some items. And then I think Central was starting one too. So I think you're right, Barb. Just call the school near you, and they probably know where you can take clothes.
Yeah, Grand Junction definitely has the entire
Yeah.
boutique setup.
Yeah.
I know that Central has some resources available there. But Dos Rios has one for elementary aged kids, and I know Junction has one for high school and, whatever. They take just about everything there.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Thank you, everyone.